Chapter 579. In the middle of March, the northernmost state of the United States was still covered in thick white, and the forest was covered in silver. Lu Cheng and Yenjika sat on the sleigh, the wind raging in their ears. Their surroundings were clean and white, and they were running freely in the vast world. In front of them, a group of specially trained dogs were running quickly, giving off a cheerful atmosphere. When he stopped, Yenjika, who was wearing a cute plush hat, was dressed in white, and had a beautiful face, said with a smile in her eyes, "So cute. But I like huskies more." Huskies? Lu Cheng didn't dare to compliment his little fairy's taste. He muttered, "Stupid, stupid, and dumb." Hearing him slander huskies, Yenjika couldn't help but laugh out loud with her gloves covering her mouth. "What's wrong?" Lu Cheng was confused. The girl's eyes turned and looked at him with a faint smile. She emphasized each word, "stupid, stupid, and dumb." After that, she let out a crisp laugh again, which made Lu Cheng stunned. He opened his mouth and asked, "Can you tell me what the joke is?" "Nothing. You're thinking too much." Yenjika replied with a serious expression and changed the topic. "We've been here for a few days. Why haven't we seen the aurora yet? Didn't they say that if we try for 3 consecutive nights, we have a 90% chance of seeing it?" She pouted and said with grievance, "Are we the pitiful 10% of the children?" "No, we've only tried for 2 nights." Lu Cheng held his little fairy and walked with her on the way back. Although the couple had been here for almost 5 days and rented a cabin at the observation point, they didn't go there at first because of the bad weather. They waited until the weather improved before they tried again. "Yeah, do you think we'll see it tonight?" Yenjika asked for confirmation. Lu Cheng smiled and said, "I signed up for a tour group. A driver will take us to the most likely place to see it. He's a local and has led many tour groups before. He's familiar with the place. And the weather forecast doesn't have bad news." "When did you sign up?" Yenjika's dark and beautiful eyes were full of adorableness. "I'm someone who has made guides before. After failing to see the aurora twice in a row, I started to think of other ways." "Oh right, didn't I mention this to you before? Why do you look so lost?" Lu Cheng laughed and asked. "I was having so much fun that I forgot." Yes, that must be it." Yenjika beamed like the most beautiful scenery in the boundless snow. When Lu Cheng turned his head and looked ahead, her expression gradually changed. She seemed to be worried about him and didn't dare to indulge in her emotions. At night in the minibus, Lu Cheng and Yenjika found a place close to each other and chatted in low voices while waiting for the rest of the group to gather. This was a city, so there was still signal. The couple was holding their phones, which were covered in thermal clothes, and browsing interesting things from time to time. Out of habit, Yenjika clicked into Lu Cheng's fan forum. She was sad and melancholy to see that the forum had become deserted. Ever since Cheng posted that Weibo in January, the forum had been bustling with activity for more than 10 days. Some were praying for blessings, some were cheering, some were provoking, and some were making counterattacks. There were so many kinds of posts. When it came to the Chinese New Year, everyone became busy. Without the support of passion, the forum, which lacked new content and expectations, gradually lost its popularity. The number of posters and replies decreased day by day. Some persisted for a week, some persisted for a month. Most people had more than one hobby. After a while, the attention on the forum decreased. "I don't know what to post except for signing in and praying." Eternal nightfall emoji. Yen Shaoling lowered her head and sighed. "Little nightfall, what are you worried about?" Clenching and dancing expression, Brahmin said. "It was just the 2 of us back then. Wasn't it very fulfilling? But at that time I was full of hope. Now I'm sad." "Wah," Yen Shaoling burst into tears. "I'm sad too. I don't know how many times I've cried." Brahmin said. "Sai Chao Zi, just play dumb. Entertain everyone and raise their hopes." Unparalleled Dragon King replied with a Nike mouth emoji. Yenjika continued to browse. Compared to yesterday, the number of new posts was less than 2/3 of the main page. She pursed her lips and silently exited the forum. She didn't share this matter with Lu Cheng. While she was fiddling with the digital camera in the various thermal devices, The last few members of the group arrived. The driver and the cameraman said a few words and started the journey. There was no aurora in one place. There were two places where they still couldn't see it. After changing to a few suitable places for observation, the driver stopped and said apologetically, "Ladies and gentlemen, the clouds tonight are thicker than expected. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Tomorrow at the same time, we'll meet at the same place. No extra payment. This is my compensation for tonight. It takes fate to see the aurora." Someone sighed and didn't blame the driver. Lu Cheng and Yenjika looked at each other and smiled bitterly. After returning to the city and getting off the bus, a cold wind blew, piercing into their bones. "It's really 10% now." Yenjika pouted. She wrapped herself up like a cute bear with a scarf around her neck and a mask covering her face. "There are 2 more days. Don't worry." Lu Cheng comforted her. Just then, he remembered the weather forecast he had checked. A thought flashed through his mind. "It seems to be getting better at midnight. Why don't we drive to the cabin and wait there?" Yenjika looked up, her eyes clear. She pondered for a few seconds and said, "Okay." Even if they still couldn't see it, it was still a good memory to share with Cheng. The road was slippery and the wind was howling. Yenjika drove carefully and finally arrived at the observation camp safely. She stayed in the cabin. Warmth filled the air. They snuggled in the chair and looked out of the window. They chatted casually and waited for the time to come. Seeing that the sky was getting darker and it was getting late, Yenjika stretched herself and said to Lu Cheng, "We're not waiting. We'll try again tomorrow night. You're the one who needs to train in the morning." "Okay." Lu Cheng exhaled and stood up. Just as they were about to turn their heads, they caught a glimpse of magical green from the corner of their eyes. It was burning in the sky, twisting and swaying faintly. "Aurora." Lu Cheng and Yenjika looked at each other with joy in their eyes. Without thinking, they held hands, pushed open the door, and rushed out to a wider and more open place. They ran and stopped. After an unknown amount of time, all they could see was the vast and boundless cold sky and the brilliant aurora that didn't seem to exist in reality. It was dreamy, magnificent, magical, beautiful, swaying, burning, majestic, beautiful, swaying, burning, majestic, and vast. Lu Cheng and Yenjika felt that they were so insignificant in front of the majestic and fantastical scene of the natural world. They felt that their daily troubles were so insignificant. Their bodies and minds settled down and were not stained with dust. It was as if the word, confrontation, was written on them. "It's so beautiful," the girl exclaimed softly. Lu Cheng came back to his senses, took out his digital camera, and took a picture of this natural dreamscape. After taking a few more pictures, he took a group photo of his little fairy and the scene of the heavenly court. Then he extended his arm and engraved their heads together under the brilliant aurora. At the end, Yenjika sighed with satisfaction, "We're pretty lucky." As she spoke, she looked towards the campsite and blurted out in shock, "We ran that far?" Lu Cheng followed her gaze and chuckled in agreement. "Yeah, unknowingly." His eyes twinkled. He turned around, squatted down, and said with a smile, Come, I'll carry you back." "It's okay, I'm not tired." Yenjika shook her head in surprise. Seeing that Lu Cheng didn't change his posture, she had no choice but to climb onto him. She supported her knees and stood up. In the cold night, Lu Cheng stepped on the snow, creaking as he walked in the cold wind. After 10 steps, Yenjika felt the stiffness of his body and the pause of his movements. She wanted to jump down and lighten her husband's burden, but she sensed Lu Cheng's insistence. She moved her eyes and leaned closer to him, pressing her face against his shoulder. She didn't say anything, didn't mention anything, and didn't care what the future held. The journey wasn't too long, but Lu Cheng walked and stopped. After a while, they finally returned to the cabin. His back was soaked in cold sweat from various factors. Closing the door, Yenjika looked at the outside world and said happily, "This trip is perfect." "Yeah." Lu Cheng also sighed with emotion. At this moment, the girl turned around and stared at him with her beautiful eyes. She bit her lower lip and said, "Cheng, do you have something to tell me?" "Huh." Lu Cheng didn't know what expression to make. Since the end of February, until the last few days of our trip, you've been like that emoji pack. You want to say something but you don't. You want to say something but 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 you want to say it again. Before Lu Cheng answered, she added fiercely, "If you're saying that you're not good enough for me now, then don't say it." Lu Cheng sighed and laughed at the same time. How could it be this? Yenjika was stunned and blurted out, "You really have something to tell me?" Lu Cheng looked at the dark night outside and turned back to look at his little fairy. He nodded slightly, yes. Chapter 580. Yenjika felt that the lights in the wooden hut had dimmed significantly. She pursed her lips and said, "You're not thinking of risking your life in the war-torn zones, are you?" "How is that possible? Going to the war-torn zones in my current state isn't a risk, it's a suicide mission." Lu Cheng shook his head with a faint smile. Yenjika was confused and perplexed. She bit her pink lips with her pearly white teeth and said, "Then what do you want to tell me?" Lu Cheng was silent for a few seconds before he said, "I want to ask your grandpa and grandma for a favor." "Huh?" Yenjika was confused. "What's so difficult about it? You can tell me whenever you want." Lu Cheng gave a wry smile and said slowly in a low voice, Actually, after understanding the nature of the sequela, I knew there was a way to solve this problem." Yenjika's dark eyes widened. She blurted out, "What is it?" Lu Cheng lowered his head and looked at his feet. He smiled and looked up again. "Do you remember how someone on Weibo guessed back then? He said that I was heavily injured because I failed to awaken my supernatural ability for the third time. Well, after I awakened my supernatural ability for the second time, my master said that the balance of the Jindan was in a very fragile state. Although he didn't know that it was the Jindan, if he wanted to squeeze it and use it to strengthen himself, he would have to face the violent impact of the complete disintegration. He would have to at least have the physique of a physical invulnerability expert, and he could only try it under the supervision of a mighty one. Now that the Jindan has spread throughout my body and merged with my origin, its connection with my force isn't weaker, but stronger. However, it still maintains an independent and complete structure, so I can't sense it in my normal state and can't control it when I'm in the state of Jindan equilibrium. I think that if I squeeze my body to the limit like before, it will naturally give me feedback. After this feedback, its fragile balance will be broken and its structure will completely disintegrate. This means that I will have to bear the effects of all the sequelae for the next few decades, or maybe even more. Without the Jindan, there won't be any sequelae. Because it's a backlash of both ice and fire, your grandpa and grandma are more suitable than my master and the Dragon King. Their yin-yang twist should be more effective at that time." Lu Cheng looked at Yenjika. Looking at her sparkling and beautiful eyes, he paused for a few seconds before continuing. "It's dangerous. I keep telling myself that the reason you practice martial arts is to protect your parents, protect your family and friends. It's not to compete with others, to gain recognition, or to satisfy your vanity. Unless you have no other choice, you can't take the initiative to take risks. You can't use your own safety as a bargaining chip. Therefore, I've been looking for a more reliable and safer approach. I've been waiting for the experiment of the mixture of cultivation and martial arts that might take more than 10 years to come out. Even if I lose my pride and show my weakness to everyone, I know that I should and must do so. But recently, I've been having trouble sleeping. I often think of the days when we fought for the national competition together. I think of the tears and smiles that we shed. I think of the scenes when we performed to our heart's content in the arena. I think of the cheers you gave me. I think of the way we discussed the competition seriously." Yenjika's vision blurred and she bit her lips instinctively. She didn't say anything and just listened to him quietly. Lu Cheng gave a wry smile and sighed. Other than liking you, loving you, and the dream of spending a lifetime with you, other than being the fairy's husband, father and mother's son, grandpa and grandma's grandson, and master's disciple, I think I'm still Lu Cheng." Lu Cheng, who loved martial arts novels and watching arena competitions since childhood, who had posters of the strong plastered all over his room, who worshipped the Dragon King, who got acquainted with you because of martial arts, who was indescribably excited for his first battle, who hated failure while enjoying victory, who always figured out his opponent's way of thinking, who wanted to go further, who wanted to see more powerful masters and more unique skills, and who dreamed of becoming a mighty one with physical invulnerability. After expressing his thoughts in an incomplete manner, he solemnly looked at his future partner. "Ku, I want to give it a try." Yenjika subconsciously turned her head to the side and then quickly turned back. Her eyes met Lu Cheng's in a daze and didn't move away at all. Her voice was no longer clear and slightly hoarse as she said, "Cheng, I remember the days when I was hesitating whether to study abroad or not. My feelings were probably the same as yours now. Cheng, I like the love of hope. In the small details, we are willing to accommodate each other and change ourselves for each other. But in the big picture, it's two independent, brilliant, and beautiful souls that become complete and better because of their love and union. It's not a case of one party compromising and becoming a puppet with no self but only love." She paused for a moment, pursed her lips, and asked as usual, "Well, how dangerous is this?" Lu Cheng's vision blurred, and he forced a smile. "Actually, it's not that dangerous. With my current physical fitness, even if I'm not close to physical invulnerability, I'm not far from it. And with your grandfather and grandmother's suppression, transformation, and balance, there's not much danger to my life. Well, just in case, I'll ask my master and the Dragon King to watch over me. But after the mutation of the gene Dan, it has spread throughout my body and is no longer limited to my dantian. The backlash may hurt my head, paralyze me, and turn me into an idiot. I've thought about it for a long time and have a solution. The danger isn't that high. Currently, the biggest possibility is that the mutation of the genes is close to collapse under the disintegration and is changing in a bad direction. If that's the case, I won't have any supernatural ability, and I won't be able to change my path and become the most ordinary Dan stage martial artist. If that's the case, I'll completely give up and honestly open a martial arts club, open a simplified beauty class for cultivators, and stop having unrealistic fantasies and seriously earn money to support my family. Even if I succeed, I'll completely lose my gene Dan and become a martial artist with low potential in the eyes of others. Before Lu Cheng could finish, Yenjika interrupted him with her eyes glistening with tears. She took a deep breath and stared deeply into his eyes. "I'll wait for you, forever." How far is forever? Lu Cheng didn't think about it. At this moment, he only knew who said that men don't cry. 3 days later, after communicating with all parties, they boarded a flight back to China at night. The ticket price was much more expensive than booking in advance, but it was no longer important. What a pity that we didn't go anywhere else to see the seals. Yenjika looked out of the porthole, half disappointed and half sighing. Next time. Lu Cheng reached out and held his little fairy's delicate hand, solemnly promising. "Okay, next time." Yenjika nodded heavily. She opened her fingers and held Lu Cheng's tightly. Passing through layers of clouds and across the sea, they arrived at Jiangnan. They arrived at the Ji family's old house and entered the place where Ji Jianzhang and Dou Ning practiced martial arts. The place was enclosed by alloy walls and a similar roof. Arrangements had been made in advance. Cold and hot flowed around in a regular and orderly manner. The elegant and handsome Ji Jianzhang and the graceful Dou Ning stood at the 2 points of the drawn Tai Chi, allowing their future grandson-in-law to stand on the dividing line. The handsome and dignified Dragon King, Chen Qitao, and Geezer Shi, who had put down the wine, surrounded Lu Cheng along the dividing line. Yenjika didn't enter willfully for fear of disturbing the mighty ones. She hid in the surveillance room and watched everything through the well-protected cameras on the roof. She put her palms together and pressed them against her lips. "Are you ready?" Ji Jianzhang looked at his future grandson-in-law. Lu Cheng checked his state of mind and nodded solemnly. "I'm ready." "Are you sure you want to try this?" Dou Ning interrupted and asked. "I'm sure." Lu Cheng exhaled, determined. Dragon King nodded in satisfaction and said in a deep voice, "Then let's begin." Lu Cheng lifted his head and looked at the camera. A smile appeared on his face. Then he visualized and activated Emperor Yen Force. At the beginning of the collapse, The backlash would be based on the force used. If he used fire, it would be ice. If he used ice, it would be fire. When he passed the first round, it would erupt at the same time. Although the total damage of ice and fire was about the same, the cold was more of a continuous corrosive effect. It wasn't as terrifying as the instant explosion of fire. It was more advantageous for Lu Cheng to suppress it when he was at his weakest and most vulnerable. Therefore, he chose to use Emperor Yen to squeeze himself dry. He shook his shoulders and swung his arms. His fist was covered in flames and he punched forward heavily. Bam! He seemed to have returned to his young self when he first entered the arena. Bam! Another heavy punch and another burst of flames. Lu Cheng seemed to see the him who persisted in his morning training. Bam! He punched the air. That was the him who listened to Ku's cheers and burned to his heart's content. Bam! 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 The crimson light kept flashing. That was the him who relied on preparation, analysis, surprise, and improvisation to create miracles step by step. He made it to the top 8 of the Warrior Sage Challenge tournament. That was the him who did his best to defeat strong opponents and won the provincial championship trophy in ecstasy. That was the him who bore the pressure of Lin Kei's heavy injuries and finally lived up to his expectations. After an unknown period of time, Lu Cheng started to pant. He endured the backlash of the burn and squeezed himself desperately. Bam! 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 The surroundings became hot. That was the him who eliminated the hidden dangers and protected Ku. That was the him who improved his parents' living conditions because of martial arts to earn money. That was the him who became mature, steady, and confident through martial arts practice. That was the him who dreamed of the peak and the future. Phew! Lu Cheng's body was empty and he kept panting. He felt his fire force dry up and vaguely connected to the source. At this moment, his vision wavered. He seemed to see the him who struggled in pain. He saw the him who went from hope to despair time and time again. He saw the reality of the sea that swallowed all his pride. It was as if someone was asking in his ears, "Are you willing? Are you willing to give up like this? Are you willing to guard the martial arts club and teach your disciples for the rest of your life? Are you willing to tell Ku and your children, 'If it weren't for me'? Are you willing to be looked at with pity all the time? Are you willing to let Ku and our parents feel sorry for you but don't dare to say it? Are you willing to live a normal life most of the time with a smile on your face, but at some point in time, you suddenly feel sorrow in your heart and pain in your bones? Are you willing?" Lu Cheng gave his answer with a roar. He punched forward with an unyielding fist. Bam! He clenched his fist and punched the air. Huge flames soared and lit up the entire training ground. The alloy walls shook and half of the cameras were destroyed. Something in Lu Cheng's body seemed to have broken. A terrifying and turbulent cold wave appeared clearly. His consciousness looked down at himself from above. Gritting his teeth, he endured the pain and contracted his body. "You dare to climb the mountain of swords and step on the fire. For love and for me." Chapter 581. Lu Cheng retracted his qi and blood at the right time. He immediately saw the outer layer of the Jindan explode and scatter in all directions. Inside, the wind and clouds were surging and the water was churning. It had already lost its balance and was about to disintegrate. With a boom, the cold wave immediately surged and spread, sweeping wildly. Pierced by the bone-piercing cold, Lu Cheng could no longer maintain his force concentration. He watched helplessly as his Dan force collapsed and his spirit returned to its original position. He watched helplessly as his blood vessels froze from his abdomen. The rusty liquid that carried the scent of rust froze in an instant. It was scarlet and cold. Inch by inch, it reached his intestines and heart. Thump, thump, thump. Lu Cheng's heart contracted and expanded violently, releasing warm blood and bursting with a stream of fire from every part of his body. It was trying its best to fight against the coldness of the 10,000 paths. Its loud sound was like the beating of a drum, reverberating around the training ground. Fortunately, it was in the torso. If it was in the head, it would leave behind irreversible damage. Lu Cheng's solution to the Jindan spreading throughout his body and the possible impact on his brain was to use the realm of encountering gods in the void to seize the opportunity and retract his qi and blood, shifting the main battlefield to his abdomen. After the eruption of the Dan qi, the deadly cold spread rapidly to every part of Lu Cheng's body as his blood flowed. It was about to cross his neck, turn his spine, and enter his head. At this moment, Lu Cheng felt a weight on his shoulder. Heat flowed in and white frost flowed out, forming a balance between the internal and external. The blood in his head was only slightly cold. Ji Jianzhang and Dou Ning were at the two origin points of the yin-yang Tai Chi diagram, each holding a 3-foot-long sword. Stirring the magnetic field, they slowly rotated, alternating between light and dark, enveloping Lu Cheng, whose face was frighteningly pale. The coldness was extracted and the warmth was transmitted. Lu Cheng's body stabilized the situation. The flowing hot blood began to melt the frost and recover the lost ground. If the third supernatural ability awakening was only at this level, he felt that he could attempt it as long as he was at the inhuman stage before the Jindan spread. He had a high chance of success. Unfortunately, the nebula had mutated. Unfortunately, the main event was the subsequent disintegration. At this very moment, the crystalline and crimson red that had lost their independent structure did not spread out anymore. The jade star sometimes cut through the sky, and sometimes it shone brightly. The great suns were like enraged ferocious beasts. After an extremely oppressive and heavy shake, they would erupt in an extremely terrifying manner. Lu Cheng could already imagine the sound of an explosion in his body. His internal organs were thrown out, his limbs, torso, and eyes were scattered everywhere. He was completely smashed into pieces. This was equivalent to the desperate strike of a top-notch physical invulnerability expert. Furthermore, it was aimed at his internal organs. The disintegration of the Jindan was enough to make any inhuman die without a complete corpse. It was enough to directly blow up a building. At this moment, the Dragon King made his move. He extended his right palm and grabbed at Lu Cheng's abdomen. His 5 fingers were covered with extremely heavy dark purple flames. Silently, like a hot knife through butter, he stabbed into Lu Cheng's abdomen. Wherever the flames passed, the blood vessels were charred black and the wounds were sealed shut. Not a single drop of blood flowed out. That heaviness was like a candle flame that attracted a bunch of moths. The great suns rapidly drew closer, and the light and heat they emitted were all absorbed by Chen Qitao's palm. He retracted his hand. In the center of his palm, the blazing white light was exaggerated. The violent force was so substantial that it was on the verge of exploding and razing the surrounding area to the ground. The Dragon King's expression did not change. He suddenly clenched his fist. The dark purple light immediately brightened, and the blazing white light was extinguished in an instant. At the same time, he straightened his waist and pushed his feet inward. Suddenly, an explosion occurred deep underground, shaking the ground violently. The training ground made of alloy clanged and almost collapsed. The nearest observation station collected data of a small-scale earthquake. The great suns in Lu Cheng's body had quietly disintegrated, turning into pure fire force that charred his skin and clothes. The stars had completely lost their balance and were about to expand and spread out. Geezer sure coughed. He reached out his left hand and pressed it on Lu Cheng's shoulder. His body became illusory, as if there was an endless cold darkness hidden in his body. He tore open his disciple's muscles, pinched his blood vessels, and suddenly pulled them out. With the help of Ji Jianzhang and Dou Ning's suppression and conversion, the sparkling fragments of the resplendent star naturally filled the empty space and surged into his arm with a howl. With a shake of his shoulder and a fling of his arm, Geezer Sure threw the pervading cold wave behind him and coughed violently. The temperature dropped sharply. The alloy walls and replaceable floorboards were instantly covered with thick layers of ice. Lead clouds gathered in the room, and heavy snow fell. It was not like Jiangnan, but the North Pole. This strange scene did not disappear for a long time. With the help of several mighty ones with physical invulnerability, Lu Cheng finally got through the most dangerous and problematic stage. It was so terrifying that it was much more exaggerated than what Geyser had expected. Of course, this was mainly because he didn't know it was a Jindan at that time. Lu Cheng did not relax. Many uncontrollable hot currents and cold waves remained in the fragmented Jindan. They swept through his body, sometimes charring his blood vessels, sometimes freezing his body fluids, causing damage to his internal organs and other relatively fragile organs. The problem of internal bleeding occurred one after another. Enduring the unimaginable pain, Lu Cheng couldn't control his body at all. He felt as if he had become a glass doll, and cracks appeared in the tiniest places, connecting and intertwining little by little. Light and darkness intersected, and yin and yang changed. Ji Jianzhang and Dou Ning's foreheads were soaked with sweat as they operated their swordsmanship to help their grandson-in-law straighten out the ice and fire. They smoothed out the turbulent backfire and traction and released it slowly without causing a flood-like impact. These were already closely connected to Lu Cheng's body. They couldn't do more. Next, it all depended on whether Lu Cheng could hold on until the end. In the monitoring room, Yenjika seemed to have turned into a statue. Her hands pressed against her lips didn't move at all, but the bulging blue veins were completely different from before. The pain was so intense that Lu Cheng wanted to faint, but he persisted in examining his body. He bit his lips so hard that blood flowed out, sometimes turning into ice, sometimes evaporating. His fine parts were changing little by little as the ice and fire swept through. The mutation that would have taken days to complete was happening in a short period of time. The injuries to his internal organs were getting worse and worse. Lu Cheng felt as if he was about to lose control of his body. If this went on, it was very likely that his genes would collapse, and he would be better off dead. Even if it wasn't that serious, there was a high probability that his supernatural abilities would be erased due to the mutation of his root pulp. No, I have to do something. Amid the piercing pain, Lu Cheng pulled his consciousness out little by little, allowing it to climb 3 feet above his head bit by bit. For Kuz, I'll wait for you, forever. For Dad and Mom not to be sad and in pain. For my pride and dreams. Lu Cheng screamed madly in his heart. His eyes were wide open and bloodshot. In the extreme pain that exceeded his limits, he finally felt as if his consciousness had left his body and was looking down at it. All-seeing God above his head. In the chaos of his body, Lu Cheng couldn't control the fine details. However, he gritted his teeth and circulated his qi and blood in a way that balanced the rotation. The cold contained the scorching heat, and the light illuminated the darkness. The ice and fire rotated and intertwined in a delicate balance, as though they were forming a universe that corresponded to the yin-yang taiji diagram in the outside world. Under Ji Jianzhang and Dou Ning's guidance, the initial difficulty and sluggishness gradually became smoother and smoother. The sweeping was much gentler and the changes were much slower. The burden on Lu Cheng's body lessened, and he finally made it through the terrifying stage of relying on himself. Without a source, the power of the backlash grew weaker and more tamed. Lu Cheng's pain had become numb due to the lack of support. This allowed him to gradually regain control of the fine details. He wriggled his flesh and stopped his internal injuries. When the ice and fire weakened to a certain extent, Lu Cheng suddenly visualized the forwarding formula to suppress the negative feelings and return his mind to a peaceful lake. Immediately after, he opened his throat and said hoarsely, "Confrontation, army, fighting, swordsman, wholeness, formation, alignment, forwarding, attainment." Ancient words appeared one by one, forming a 3-dimensional seal script. In an instant, the remaining power of the Jindan was subdued. They guided the genes and mutated the root pulp to a state close to perfection. Bam! Lu Cheng swung his arms to the side and threw out the remaining power that he couldn't digest. The crimson and crystalline waves of air swept across, causing the ground to be a mixture of charred and frozen. Balance everywhere. Balance everywhere. After doing all this, he stood in the same spot, as though he was examining or in a daze. Geyser secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He cleared his throat and asked, "Brat, how do you feel? How do you feel?" Lu Cheng woke up with a start from his dream and realized his own weakness and the severity of his internal injuries. He bit the charred wound on his lip and slid a step forward. He shook his arm and threw a punch to the side. His legs gave way and he almost fell. However, he still threw a punch with determination. Bam! Lu Qing bent his back and threw another punch with difficulty. He was very weak and had no strength. However, he didn't feel so good in a long time. The backlash of freezing and burning didn't appear again. Bam! 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 Lu Qing was like a martial artist struggling on the brink of death. His body was lower and lower, but his eyes were brighter and brighter. Yes, I don't have the Jin Dan. I don't have the greatest reliance in the past. Yes, due to the uniqueness of the Dan equilibrium, I couldn't use this opportunity to break through the bottleneck and become a physical invulnerability expert. However, I still have myself, a strong supernatural ability, a perfect body, and a solid martial arts foundation. However, I don't have any hidden dangers or problems. I can walk my own path steadily. Lu Qing, who was bent over, suddenly raised his head. He shouted and threw a punch with his right fist. Bam! White frost and cold light rushed to the sky, mixed with the heavy burning white light. They fell slowly, illuminating Lu Qing's face, which was full of joy. From today onwards, he would be free to do whatever he wanted, and free to do whatever he wanted. In the monitoring room, Yenjika suddenly covered her face and sobbed softly. Tears of joy gushed out. Chapter 582. Wiwe Province, Moshang City, Yambing Mountain, ancestral grounds of the Ice God sect. A strong gust of wind blew through the layers of pine trees. Flowers bloomed brilliantly from time to time. Lu Qing sat on a chair on the balcony. His eyes reflected the beautiful scenery, but they were unfocused. He seemed to be in a daze, leisurely. After a long while, he picked up his phone, unlocked the screen, and quickly typed a few words. My internal training of root pulp is close to physical invulnerability. The realm of all-seeing God is also at this level. I'm just short of breaking through the barrier of connecting heaven and earth. Then, I'll be able to make the leap. In terms of cultivation, connecting heaven and earth is obtained naturally after the condensation of the Jindan and the fusion of essence, qi, spirit, and will. It will gradually become stronger as the Jindan matures and grows. On the path of martial arts, it's about connecting one's will and raising one's spirit. Through the normal interaction between the body and the outside world, one can find a way to influence the heaven and earth. The reflection of the surroundings in the ice mirror is a simplified feature. If I want to break through, I have to work on these two aspects at the same time. I have to sort myself out, find common points, and walk the path of physical invulnerability that belongs to Dan equilibrium. After writing this paragraph, Lu Qing flipped through the previous notes and fell into deep thought again. After breaking the Jindan and removing the hidden dangers, Shi Zhengwo insisted that Yenjika take him away so as not to be an eyesore. However, considering that his root pulp wasn't stable enough and his body hadn't recovered from his injuries, it wasn't convenient for him to travel long distances. Therefore, Shi Zhengwo reluctantly brought him back and left him in the ancestral grounds with a beautiful environment and few people to recuperate. Yenjika accompanied him for a few days until he regained some mobility. Only then did she fly to Connecticut and return to her increasingly busy studies. Lu Qing planned to recuperate for another week before returning to Xiushan. He would stay at home for 10 to 20 days to accompany his parents before returning to America. He would be far away from attention and focus on his recovery. Of course, after confirming that there were no problems, he immediately called Qi Fang and told her that he was almost fully recovered thanks to the advancement of technology and martial arts. As for his friends, he couldn't inform them one by one, nor could he explain in detail. He simply posted on his WeChat moments and said that his recovery was better than expected. He received countless likes and blessings. Dragon King had allowed him to re-sign with the club. However, he wished to enter Longhu Club only after he had attained physical invulnerability. He wanted to prove that he was worthy of the contract. While recuperating, Lu Qing didn't slack off. Whenever he was free, he couldn't help but think about his future path, looking for a unique blend of cultivation and martial arts based on himself. For this reason, he changed his habit of not keeping a diary since he was young. Whenever he had new ideas, and new understandings, he would pick up his phone, type them out in detail, and save them in many ways so that he could review and sort them out in the future. It was not until now that he finally understood why every sect had their predecessors' notes. He also understood why the martial arts masters of the past had the habit of recording their experiences, and opinions. Not only was it convenient for the younger generation to refer to and cultivate, it was also helpful for them to organize their thoughts, preserve their ideas, and record the untraceable past. Lu Cheng often regretted it now. If he had kept a complete record of his experiences and feelings from the start of body forging to Dan Equilibrium, he would definitely be able to see something different now that he was rereading it. Perhaps he would have found the key and opened up a new path without George and the rest having to make breakthroughs. Sigh, a good memory is not as good as a lousy pen. Now that I think about it, all I can remember is balance, rotation, the universe, the starry sky, and other general concepts. As his thoughts fluctuated, Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and looked at the corridor that led to the balcony. He saw a girl in a white t-shirt, jeans, and light-colored running shoes walking over gracefully. Her eyes were misty and filled with love. It was Mo Jingting. "Young martial uncle, you seem to be having a good time." She walked over with a faint smile, pulled out a chair, and sat beside him. She picked up the teapot, flipped over the cup, and poured herself a full cup. While doing all this, she kept looking at Lu Cheng with interest and curiosity. She didn't expect to meet young martial uncle, whom she hadn't seen in a long time, when she took a break from work to come back to the mountains for a holiday. He doesn't look too good and looks sickly. It seems that the injury back then was more terrible than the rumors said. It's been more than half a year and he's still so weak. Also, Master had mentioned that the most serious and troublesome thing for young martial uncle was the sequelae. It was said that he would lose most of his combat ability. Thinking of this, Mo Jingting felt that she was no longer as restrained and cautious when facing Lu Cheng as before. They seemed to be able to talk to each other as equals again. "Aren't you busy with variety shows? Why are you here?" Lu Cheng asked with a plain smile, enjoying the mountain breeze. Just a while ago, when he was chatting with Ku, she mentioned that a variety show was very popular recently. The status of the participants had risen a level, including Mo Jingting. Mo Jingting sipped her tea and turned to look at the sea of pine trees. She replied with a sigh and a smile, "If you're tired, just go home and rest. It's quiet here and the air is good. Every time I stay here for a few days, my mood will become very good." After pausing for a few seconds, she asked casually, "Young martial uncle, are you here to rest?" "Yeah." Lu Cheng didn't hide it. Mo Jingting retracted her gaze and smiled thoughtfully. "At that time, I had just entered the music industry and felt that I was full of energy, had a loud voice, and had excellent control of my abdominal cavity and other body parts. I was considered a good singer in the KTV and didn't care about singing skills. In the end, when I entered the recording studio for the first time, I almost broke down and cried all the way back to the apartment. After that, I put down my pride and studied seriously with the instructor for half a year before I was considered a beginner. From then on, I knew that there's no obstacle that can't be overcome. It all depends on your attitude." Lu Cheng almost laughed and shook his head slowly. "You don't have to comfort me in such a roundabout way. I'm fine now. I'm really fine now." Mo Jingting giggled and said, "Young martial uncle's mental fortitude is great." She didn't dwell on this topic and suddenly had an idea. She smiled and asked, "Young martial uncle, are you interested in doing business?" "Huh." Lu Cheng was a little unaccustomed to the sudden change in topic. Mo Jingting chuckled and said, "You know that there's a big film company in the sect, right? In the past 1 or 2 years, online TV series and movies have been developing very quickly. I plan to start a business with my senior brothers and senior sisters to test the waters in this area. When the time comes, each of us will invest a sum of money and go to the sect fund to raise funds. If it develops well, the sect's film and television company will buy it. If we want to sell it, we can sell it. If we want to keep a certain amount of shares, we can keep a certain amount of shares. We're all family, so it's easy to talk to each other. No matter what happens to young Marshall Uncle in the future, just based on his inhuman stage and the two mighty ones with physical invulnerability behind him, even if they don't take money, they can get a share. However, there's no need to say that out loud. This is poaching from the Ice God sect. Lu Cheng was speechless. He took a sip of tea and said, "Forget it. You guys do it yourselves. Don't drag me in." "Really?" Mo Jingting was surprised. This is a good thing for free and young Marshall Uncle doesn't want to accept it. "If I'm interested in the future, I'll look for you guys again." Lu Cheng declined tactfully. In the future, the professional cook will be in charge of the family's investments. I don't need to blindly get involved and waste my energy. Wouldn't it be better to spend my time thinking about physical invulnerability? Seeing that young Marshall Uncle's attitude was gentle but firm, Mo Jingting didn't say anything more. After exchanging a few pleasantries, she got up and left. She walked along the corridor towards her fixed residence, her heart full of doubts. That's weird. In young Marshall Uncle's current situation, shouldn't he be looking for a way out and find ways to make money for the rest of his life? Shouldn't he hit it off with us immediately? Why isn't he moved at all? He didn't even ask about the price? Is it because the blow is too big and he's so disheartened that he doesn't want to do anything? Lu Cheng didn't care what Mo Jingting was thinking. Seeing that lunchtime was approaching and the servants were about to deliver the food, he stood up slowly and casually took a picture of the beautiful mountain scenery outside the balcony with his smartphone. He first sent it to his sleeping little fairy and then posted it separately on Weibo, WeChat Moments, and other places. He even added a poem. In April, the fragrance of the mortal world ends, and the peach blossoms in the mountain temple begin to bloom. Not long after, while he was enjoying the delicious food, he suddenly received a call from Talker. "Cheng, you're King in Moshang?" Little Ming asked in surprise. Lu Cheng asked in confusion, "How did you know? Do you think I'm stupid? When you sent the picture, you turned on your GPS." Kai Zhongming said in annoyance and amusement. "We're in Moshang too. Do you want to come and visit?" This year's University Martial Arts Nationals competition is in Moshang? Lu Cheng suddenly realized. If things were going normally, he would definitely pay attention to the Songqing University Martial Arts Club's next journey. Who knew that such a thing would happen to him? His mood, energy, and other aspects were all affected. He only occasionally heard a few words from Little Ming. For example, Deng Yang broke through to the dance stage at the end of last year. He also understood the concept of withdrawing. Under the leadership of the two, Songqing University and Shannon worked together to eliminate the previous runner-up, Shanbei, who had a gap in strength, and advanced into the nationals together. As for where the nationals would be held, he forgot to ask at that time and didn't remember to check later. "Hey, it's been less than a year and you've completely forgotten about us? Hey, it's always the newcomers who laugh, but the old ones who cry?" Kai Zhongming pretended to be sad and said, "We're in Moshang, Yellow Crane Hotel. Do you want to come? Just say the word." Lu Cheng smiled and said, "Okay, I'll make an appointment with a driver. I'll let you know when I confirm. There's no one on this mountain. I can't even get a taxi. I can only find the general affairs of the sect." "TSK, are you cultivating immortality on the mountain?" Kai Zhongming scolded jokingly. The next afternoon, Lu Cheng walked into the Yellow Crane Hotel with his hands in his pockets. He saw the talker, Kai Zhongming, who was as elegant as ever. He was dressed casually and looked more mature than before. He was more attractive to girls than before. The only problem was that he still hadn't taken the step to the dance stage. "You've been emptied?" Little Ming blurted out in confusion. Didn't Ching say that his body was recovering better than expected? This is called better than expected? Then how bad was the estimation? Lu Cheng sneered and said, "Talker, are you blind? Can't you see that there's no construction without destruction? Can't you see that this is the second time I've been injured? I didn't look this bad in the photos taken by the reporters earlier." "The second time you've been injured?" Kai Zhongming asked blankly. "The price to pay for complete recovery." Lu Cheng explained concisely. Kai Zhongming suddenly understood and patted Lu Cheng on the shoulder. I knew you'd live for 1,000 years. It's not that easy to leave. Lu Cheng almost staggered from the pat. He said unhappily, take care of the patient. Tiske, I have to enjoy this feeling before you recover. The feeling of sending a high-ranked dance stage expert flying with one slap. Little Ming gave him another slap. Of course, this time he didn't use any strength. While talking, he led Lu Cheng into his room. Deng Yang, He Zi, Yan Shaoling and the rest were already waiting there. Lulu, senior. Yan Shaoling was the first to speak. She stuttered and shouted, how's your recovery? I heard from senior that it's much better than expected. Lu Cheng chuckled and answered, yes, I'll be able to return to the arena in 3 or 4 months. Yeah. Yan Shaoling waved her arms and spun around subconsciously. I have to tell them and make them happy. She took out her phone and posted on the fan forum. I saw senior. I saw Lu Cheng. He said that he'll be fully recovered in 3 or 4 months and can compete. The forum was boiling with excitement. The rest of the people began to talk about it excitedly. Many reporters would come over every day to take a look to see if there was any news material. After discovering the Eternal Nightfall post, they hurriedly checked the contract filing of the Martialist Association through internal channels. Then, they came up with a piece of news. Lu Cheng is about to make a comeback but has nothing to do with Longhu. Does this mean that his potential has been exhausted? P.S. There are only 100 votes left to reach the top 10. Don't waste them. Expired votes are invalid. Chapter 583. In Kai Zhongming's room, He Zi glanced at the excited Yan Shaoling and said with disdain, don't worry about her. She'll be fine in a while. Lu Cheng chuckled and looked around at the crowd. At first, I thought that it would be good enough if one of you could reach the dance stage. This would mean that our martial arts club is on the right track. Who would have thought that in less than a year after I left, Deng Yang and He Zi would successively comprehend, withdraw, and successfully advance. He gave a thumbs up to show his appreciation. This made the cheerful Deng Yang shy. He scratched his head and said, you flatter me. I'm not as good as you, senior brother Lu. He was always nervous in front of his idol. Lu Cheng shook his head and laughed. He turned to Mu Jinyan, Wang Dali, and the others and said, don't be affected by this. Although there is a probability of reaching the dance stage, this is only relative to the overall sample. A small number of people or a small group of people are not affected by this restriction. It's not that you have no hope just because Deng Yang and He Zi broke through. Look at Daxing Temple and Ice God Sect. Dare to dream. After everyone responded seriously, Little Ming laughed and scolded, Cheng, why are you talking like an old leader who came back for an inspection? Are you going to say, this is the place where I fought and lived? It has a good tradition. I hope everyone can show that they can bear hardships and fight well. Talker, I think it's a pity that you don't want to be a crosstalk artist. Lu Cheng was used to teasing him. Kai Zhongming had decided to go back to his hometown and take over his father's company after graduation. When the time came, he would consider liquidating the company and changing careers. Because his body was still weak, Lu Cheng didn't stay for long. He and Kai Zhongming found a quiet and secluded place to drink tea and chat until the evening. Lao, Yan Shaoling paced back and forth in the room, her excitement written all over her face. She picked up her phone and browsed the forum. Suddenly, she saw a link from All the Good Names Are Taken by Dogs. The title came into view and flashed by. Yan Shaoling suddenly frowned and clicked on the content. The reporter wrote, according to sources close to Lu Cheng, the former Heavenly Son will recover in 3 or 4 months and step into the ring again. You are the past, your whole family is the past. Yan Shaoling cursed inwardly and continued reading. According to the feedback from the Martial Artist Association, Lu Cheng hasn't signed a professional contract with any forces, including Longhu. In other words, he's a free fighter. With the strength, realm, and potential that he has shown in the past, although it will take 3 or 4 months for him to fully recover, there will definitely be no shortage of pursuers. The various forces should have waived their checkbooks and tried to recruit him. Unfortunately, we did not see that. Does this mean something? Could it be that in the eyes of the major forces, Lu Cheng is a risky investment and no longer possesses such terrifying potential? That's right. A high-ranked Dan stage fighter is definitely an honored guest of various forces. However, in the eyes of the teams participating in the top professional competitions, their value is just SOSO. Do they lack in humans? Not lacking. They are only lacking future experts with the potential to break through to the physical invulnerability stage. Lu Cheng's cold reception might reflect something. After reading the report, Yan Xiaoling's mouth gradually turned into an O shape. She vaguely guessed that the source of the reporter's information was her post. However, she never thought that a simple sentence of hers could generate so many things. It's a waste of talent if you don't write novels. Puffing up her cheeks, Yan Xiaoling quickly scrolled through the comments and reposts. A serious injury that took an entire year to recover. How can it be possible without leaving behind some problems and losing some of his potential? How depressing. It's so depressing to think that a heavenly son of the era who braved the wind and waves has become an old inhuman who failed time and time again. This tells us that life is full of surprises and that we should enjoy ourselves while we can. To the girl above, do you want to meet me? Seriously, does Lu Cheng need your sympathy? He is an inhuman mighty one. Even if he can't break through to the physical invulnerability stage, his future life will definitely be better than yours by 100 or 1,000 times. To be honest, if Lu Cheng isn't so focused on the top professional competitions, he can choose any second-tier team he wants. Poison Milk Hierarch, what do you think? The profile picture of Poison Milk Hierarch was a shiny round head. He reposted twice in a row. What can I think? I haven't seen Lu Cheng and I haven't gotten any reliable information. What can I think? Do I look like the kind of person who would make wild guesses without any evidence? However, I think of the past. There aren't many cases of martial arts geniuses breaking their wings halfway through, but it's definitely not rare either. Most of them can only muddle along in lower-tier competitions and slowly fade into the crowd. Phew, I'm a little relieved to hear that. Yan Xiaoling swiped with her thumb and read more comments. Lu Cheng is pretty popular. Many of my friends like him. Even if he were to fight in second-tier professional competitions, I think he would still be able to make the headlines frequently and not fade into the crowd. Previous poster, you're wrong. There are only two kinds of martial arts fans like. One is a famous physical invulnerability mighty one, and the other is a genius with extraordinary potential who can break through to the physical invulnerability stage in the future. If Lu Cheng were to remain at the inhuman stage for a decade or so, how many people would continue to like him? Every year, there are new, talented, and even good-looking little fresh meat. Who would waste their energy on a has-been heavenly son? Let's not talk about a decade later. Just look at how quiet Lu Cheng's fan forum is now after that Weibo post. How many people are still following him? A martial artist with no hope is like an ice cream dropped on the ground. Who would bend down and lick it? Sigh, you're right. This world is just that cruel. Of course not. Yan Xiaoling muttered silently and switched back to the forum. Howling into the sky expression. That despicable reporter, what's his name? I'll remember you. I must do something. She felt that her little chest was about to explode. In the past, she had seen news that slandered or made up stories about Lu Cheng. Although she was very angry, it was never as bad as this, because the source of the news was her post. Little Changya, calm down, calm down. Here, there's a kitchen knife. Brahmin didn't understand the situation at first, but she didn't mind watching the show. Little Changya, Nya Chi-Chi, said thoughtfully, you're in Moshang, right? I'm here too. Why don't we meet up and discuss what to do? I'm going to kill that reporter. Yan Xiaoling was still in her own world. Sister Chi-Chi, do you want to meet up? Count me in. Count me in. I'm very close. I'm in my first year of high school. I can apply to watch the nationals. Brahmin chimed in excitedly. What are you talking about? Yan Xiaoling was at a loss. After scrolling up and down, she said, Me too. Then let's ask the others. Lu Cheng is about to enter the arena again. We have to do something. Nye Chi said with uncertainty.
What?
Yan Shaoling immediately at the unparalleled Dragon King, Wanton Seller, Naive Innocence, and the others. Brahmin went to a few groups that had become quiet and asked repeatedly, Lu Cheng is coming back. Lu Cheng is coming back soon. Is there anyone who wants to discuss what to do in the forum? If not, I'll ask again later. For a moment, they, who were still active, were full of enthusiasm and rejuvenated 100 times. Back at the halfway point of Yambing Mountain, Lu Cheng also saw the news. He even received a lot of detailed messages asking about his recent situation. All of them replied with, better than expected, recovering. Shaking his head, he exited the news. After half a year of torment, he was already able to face such groundless descriptions with a better attitude. Except for the first sentence, the whole news was filled with imagination and, I think. Even if he retorted, he wouldn't know where to start. If he was really full of flaws, then there would be no flaws. Moreover, the question of whether or not one had potential was not something that could be said with words. Arguing with a reporter in his field of expertise could turn white into black. At present, the only and best way to fight back was to find a way to make the great leap and become a mighty one with physical invulnerability. At that time, it would be the most powerful slap in the face. I'll work hard for my little fairy and for myself. Lu Cheng put down his phone complacently. At this moment, he received a message from Kai Zhongmin. Talker asked, are you coming to watch our match the day after tomorrow? Of course, I've already got a guest ticket, replied Lu Cheng with a smile. In the hotel, Yan Shaoling and the rest cheered excitedly behind and beside Kai Zhongmin. 2 days later, at 7:30 p.m., Xiling Martial Arts Stadium. Lu Cheng entered through the guest entrance and walked along the passageway to find his seat. He didn't wear black-rimmed glasses or disguise himself. He appeared in front of everyone in his original appearance. This was the first time he appeared in public since his injury in August last year. He felt that he couldn't hide the fact that he had gotten a guest ticket from the reporters. Disguising himself would also be useless, and it would also expose his usual outfit. His face was pale and his footsteps were a little shaky. Along the way, Lu Cheng received many looks of sympathy, pity, lamentation, and regret. He also received many looks of schadenfreude and those who didn't mind watching a show. After climbing mountains and wading through rivers, he finally sat down. He didn't care about the others and cast his gaze on the arena and the big screen. He watched the replays of yesterday's match, the introductions of today's team, and the advertisements. At 7:40 p.m., Lu Cheng saw from the corner of his eyes that 2 people who looked like reporters were trying to approach. When he was about to order the security personnel to separate them, he suddenly saw the image on the big screen change, and he appeared. That was the young and inexperienced version of himself when he stepped onto the arena. That was at the beginning of the Little Martial Sage Challenge tournament. What's going on? Lu Cheng stared blankly at the screen, only to see the images constantly changing. It showed him fighting against Invincible Punch, being defeated by Iron Palm, winning against the former professional 9th pin, Road to the Arena, and defeating Yi Yaoting with a terrifying outburst. Some were photos, some were clips, and all of them replayed the beginning of his martial arts. Next, Lu Cheng saw himself defeating Yimo and putting his finger to his mouth. He saw himself losing to Zhou Jingquan. He saw himself defeating strong opponents to win the provincial youth tournament. He saw himself when he first met Peng Lun. He saw himself when he tied with Ren Li. He saw himself when he finally defeated the Big Devil and lifted the Feitian Cup. He saw himself when he fought against the Inhumans during the King of 4 Nations competition. This continued until he defeated the monk of Daxing Temple in the Battle of the Kings. From youth to vigor, from frivolity to maturity, all of his martial arts experiences were shown in Lu Cheng's eyes. It also confused the reporters and the audience. At this time, the video came to an end. Some people appeared alone, some in groups. Some were Yan Shaoling and Little Wanton, some were men and women he didn't recognize. Their backgrounds were different from each other, and their appearances were unique from all over the world. They appeared separately and shrank into a small frame, side by side. Finally, on the screen, hundreds and thousands of people shouted in unison, shaking the whole arena. Lu Cheng. As the reporters trembled, the opposite stands also burst into a shout. Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng looked over subconsciously. Then he saw Yan Shaoling, Brahmin with 2 ponytails, and many familiar yet strange faces. A huge banner was held up by them, on which the words were clearly written, "You are here, we are here." End of main part. Chapter 584. Early June, Connecticut City, somewhere in the Holy Top Church. At the front of the church was a towering cross. The seats on both sides extended all the way to the door. Almost all the seats were filled with believers. The dome in the sky was grand and spacious. The walls and windows were narrow and colorful. Rays of sunlight seeped in, bringing a sense of solemnity. A bishop was holding a scripture in his hand. He was preaching slowly in a grand and dignified voice, guiding the lambs closer to the light of heaven. The whole scene was sacred and extraordinary. It made people forget their daily troubles and obtain spiritual sustenance. At this moment, Lu Cheng, wearing a white t-shirt, casual pants, and sneakers, walked in from the door. He put his hands in his pockets and took a few steps forward. He looked around and found an empty seat at the back. He didn't clasp his hands or lower his head like the believers present. Instead, he closed his eyes and leisurely used his ears, spirit, and soul to sense everything around him. Because of the discussions on the internet, he became a hot topic again. He didn't dare to stay long in Shoshan. A few days later, he flew to Connecticut City. After more than a month of rest, he had recovered most of his strength. The reason he came to the Holy Top Church to observe the ceremony was not because he wanted to convert to God. For a martial artist like him who had a firm will and knew what he wanted and what he was fighting for, faith was faith. He would never rely on an illusory God for the peace of his heart and the path of his future. During this period of time, Lu Cheng had been here to observe and comprehend. According to Geezer Schur, all training methods would lead to the same destination in the end. Lu Cheng felt that the next step of combining martial arts and cultivation, which was also the important step of advancing to physical invulnerability, might be to focus on the word sameness. Because of this, he decided to broaden the scope of his study and not limit it to cultivation and martial arts. Through the church rituals and martial arts sects, he could find the common ground, the meaning of the word sameness, and the essence of improving himself. From there, he could gain a strategic advantage. Lu Cheng closed his eyes and listened carefully. His will was 3 feet above his head. In a state of concentration and detachment, he read the changes in the ritual environment and the spiritual stability of the believers. After a while, the choir began to sing in a neat, holy, and lofty way. With the help of the special design of the chapel, the audience seemed to be immersed in the baptism of the holy light. The hesitation and anxiety in their hearts were swept away. In a short time, they seemed to have been reborn. Lu Cheng slowly opened his eyes and saw that some of the believers were already in tears. He could vaguely see milky white light rippling in the chapel, but it also seemed like an illusion. This feeling, he watched, listened, and experienced thoughtfully. He had some ideas, but he couldn't grasp the essence of it, let alone find any similarities. In a similar atmosphere, the ceremony came to an end. Lu Cheng didn't stay any longer. He stood up, put his hands in his pockets, and walked slowly to the door. A man sitting in the front row of the church happened to put down his hands and looked around as if he had sensed something. He glanced around and saw the back of the person at the door. "Huh!" The golden-haired, blue-eyed youth suddenly cried out in confusion. "What's wrong, Oblak?" The black-haired youth beside him asked in confusion. Oblak frowned and replied, "That person just now looked familiar." However, he couldn't recall who it was because he could only see the back of the person. "There's no one here." The black-haired youth looked back and saw no one by the open door. "Forget it. It's nothing important." Oblak shook his head and stood up. "I have to go back and prepare for tonight's match." He and the black-haired youth, Charles, came from Europe's Brut Ale, a branch of the mission sect. They were currently escorting the Holy Grail on an exhibition tour in America and sparring with local grandmasters of martial arts. As one of the mission sect's main strongholds on this side of the ocean, Connecticut's activities had been upgraded to a small-scale competition to determine the strongest person below the crown. The mission sect believed that the human body had 10 primordial essences in different positions, corresponding to different symbols. When all of them were condensed, a tree of life would grow and reach the ultimate crown, which was equivalent to the physical invulnerability of China. Although the crown was known as the ultimate, in the context of the church, it was only the ultimate of mortals. When the 3 crowns were worn, one would be able to lift the curtain of shadows and see the god of concealment and become a true archangel. Oblak had made a name for himself at a young age and was brimming with talent. Due to the setback and provocation in China, he had given up on his arrogance and impetuousness. As a result, he had condensed all 10 primordial essences faster than expected. He was only half a step away from growing the tree of life and 1 step away from attaining the crown. In this competition, he had been victorious and was about to enter the finals. Late at night in a villa. In the center of the living room on the first floor, there was an altar with strange symbols drawn on it. On the surrounding chairs, sofas, dining tables, and even the carpet, there were naked men and women in the midst of intense intercourse. Some were one-on-one, some were one-on-many, and some were even one-on-many. Their expressions were intoxicated and full of joy, as if they had obtained the ultimate release. At the railing on the second floor, Lu Cheng stood quietly with a paper cup in his hand. There was fruit juice in the cup. His desire rose as he watched. His mouth was dry as he drank the cold drink. He tried his best to restrain his thoughts as he sketched out the confrontation formula stroke by stroke, clearing his mind and body. Seizing this opportunity, he activated his kung fu and froze water into ice, turning the lake into a mirror and making a deity appear 3 feet above his head. Looking at the scene below, Lu Cheng had already shed his lust and impulsiveness. His eyes were dark and deep again as he observed calmly from the side with an aloof attitude. This bunch of spirit cultivators sure know how to play. He chuckled to himself. This was a spirit cultivator sect that had developed properly. In other words, they obtained members through their own preaching. They didn't need to use drugs, bewitchment, or abduction to trick innocent men and women into joining them. Therefore, he had no intention of being chivalrous. Moans entered his ears as the sea of flesh churned. Lu Cheng gently swirled the paper cup in his hand as he observed quietly and harmlessly. He gradually gained some understanding of such a scene and such cultivation. To put it simply, this is a method to break the fixed pattern. He nodded slightly and sipped his fruit juice. Since birth, everyone is bound by various rules and requirements. Once these are broken, one's body and mind will be liberated, relaxed, happy, and stimulated. Combined with one's lust, it's equivalent to the Buddhist tantric enlightenment of lust and emptiness. It doesn't seek lust, but to break one's obsession, break one's shackles, and break the original pattern of one's body and mind. In the process, if you indulge in lust, indulge in such indulgence, and indulge in the feeling of emptiness and relief after the matter is over, you will be on the wrong path. You will jump from one fixed pattern to another, forming new obsessions and new restraints. The spirit cultivator's method of seeking self-spirit is similar to that of Tantric Buddhism. Both are extreme and easy to fall into the devil's path. This is a ritual to enhance one's self-spirit. For a spirit cultivator to enter the physical invulnerability stage, one's self-spirit is closely related to one's self-spirit. What is the similarity between it and the church, the sects that focus on combat, cultivation, and martial arts? Lu Cheng, who had recently read many classics, pondered seriously. After a long time, he took the paper cup and silently disappeared from the second floor. When the ritual was over, the host's spirit cultivator returned to the second floor. He planned to seize the opportunity to see his self-spirit and raise it while his body and mind were in a relaxed and liberated state. At this moment, he looked at the study in confusion. The window was wide open, and the night wind blew in, filling the empty space. I forgot to close the window? The spirit cultivator was confused. A car sped through the empty streets at night. Smith looked ahead and asked, puzzled, Lu, why would you want to watch a devil's ritual? Lu Cheng pressed his lips with his right hand and casually made up a story. Devils have their own logic. Only by understanding them can we defeat them. You've become more and more mysterious recently. Smith shook his head and sighed. He was a Puritan passed down from his ancestors and hated the activities of spirit cultivators. Without further ado, Smith asked, there are 2 more places. What first? Lu Cheng thought for a moment and laughed self-deprecatingly. Let's call it a night. Send me back. What a strange guy. Smith criticized silently. He turned the steering wheel and turned into the road to the North District. The next morning, Lu Cheng finished his training. Wiping his sweat, he walked back to the house and happened to see Yen Zheke coming down from the 2nd floor with light steps. Ku, have you felt any obvious nourishment in your body recently? He beat her to it and asked the question that he would ask every 3 to 5 days. Yen Zheke was wearing a t-shirt that exposed her delicate collarbone. She rolled her eyes and said, It's fine. Ever since I collected the 9 words formula, my spirit has been improving rapidly. The effect of nourishing my body is also getting better. As she spoke, she walked down the stairs and said with her dimples, I feel like it won't be long before I can nourish my body, understand, withdraw, achieve Dan equilibrium, and strengthen your foundation of blending cultivation and martial arts. Isn't that awesome? As expected of Coach Yen. Lu Cheng gave her a thumbs up and praised her with a bright smile. When he first completed the cultivation and collected the 9 words formula, he purely wanted to help Ku make up for her congenital deficiency. Who would have thought that it would actually help him open up his own path? If he wanted to rely on George and the others to achieve Dan equilibrium, who knows how long it would take? And the effect of practicing the 9 words formula was also very good. His spirit had improved a lot. Recently, he even felt like a charlatan. Yen Zheke pursed her lips and said proudly, but the improved spirit has been used to nourish my body. My current state is about the same as last year. I can't stay up too late. At this point, she covered her mouth with her hand and yawned cutely. Then, her face turned red and her expression turned fierce. She lifted her leg and kicked Lu Cheng's shin. Although it was quick and swift, she didn't use much strength. Therefore, Lu Cheng could only smile in response. After breakfast, he sent his wife to Connecticut University. After leaving Aunt Du to protect her, Lu Cheng went to the martial arts club and then to the Holy Top Church to continue his observation and comprehension. Chapter 585. Holy Top Church, in a small worship room. There was no choir or fancy decorations, only a dozen or so believers praying with their eyes closed. Lu Cheng didn't say a word after he entered. He found a random corner and sat down, seriously experiencing the different sensations in the air. Tranquility, quietness, calmness, and relaxation drifted over, making him feel as though he was using the confrontation formula. Not a single clergyman or grandmaster of martial arts of the church. The church and the spirit cultivators place great emphasis on the creation and influence of the atmosphere. Lu Cheng sized up the room leisurely and had an idea. He didn't want to disturb them, so he got up quietly and walked out of the room. He glanced at his phone that was on silent mode. Seeing that there was still some time before Yen Zheke's class ended, he decided to take the opportunity to visit the Holy Grail exhibition in the church museum next door, which had recently become popular in Connecticut. It was said that this was a silver cup that once contained the blood of the Savior. According to his master, the original forms of the famous deities and gods in history were often mighty ones of physical invulnerability. There were even some who had stepped into the forbidden zone. I wonder what level the Savior belonged to? Cuckoo was very interested in this matter as well. She planned to visit on the weekend, partly to broaden her horizons and partly for a date. I'll just take it as an opportunity to get a feel for it. Lu Cheng put his hands in his trouser pockets and walked casually to the entrance of the church museum. As soon as he entered, he was stopped by a pretty blonde lady with a clean temperament. She smiled gently and said, "Hello, my name is Tracy." "Hello, My name is Trish. I'm a volunteer guide here. What can I do for you? A volunteer for the church. Lu Cheng had been here many times recently and was no stranger to this. He waved his hand and smiled. It's fine, I'm just looking around. Volunteers like this are all people who inculcate words like God, salvation, and beauty. I can understand their thoughts and feelings, but I'm sorry, I really don't like it. Compared to this, I'd rather listen to Little Ming's crosstalk. The objects on display here are all related to the history of the church. It's hard to understand their true charm just by looking at them. The blonde lady, Tracy, didn't seem disappointed at being rejected. Her smile remained unchanged as she emphasized. That works too. Lu Cheng thought for a few seconds and changed his mind. This wasn't because the other party was a beautiful girl, but because he thought of a problem. After listening to her explanation, he had a plan in mind and memorized the key points. When he went on a date with his little fairy later, he would be able to show off his knowledgeable side. Wasn't this the meaning of scouting? All right, sir, please. It's best if you look from Exhibition Hall number 1. This is the history of the spread of the Lord's Gospel, and also the history of the development of our church. Trish pointed to the far left and smiled sweetly. Lu Cheng was indifferent. He followed the volunteer guide and casually stepped into Exhibition Area number 1. There were bulletproof glass display windows on both sides, inside which were various antique objects. These are the notes left behind by Saint Simon. Before the scroll of the Dead Sea was unearthed, it was the earliest document that recorded the gospel. Trish pointed at the mottled papyrus and said. Lu Cheng nodded with great interest, earnestly memorizing the contents of the explanation. After taking a few steps and looking around, Trish's expression suddenly turned solemn. Her voice was filled with grief. She pointed to a single cabinet in the center of Exhibition Hall number 1 and said, "The Savior shed his blood for mankind. This is the ancient cup that once held the holy blood." Lu Cheng followed her gaze and saw a few security personnel with restrained auras and shocking vitality standing at the four corners of the cabinet. They didn't move an inch. A domineering, dazzling, and superior aura came from nearby and enveloped the area. In the glass display window, there was a silver cup sitting quietly. Its pattern was simple and unadorned, and there were no traces of oxidation on its entire body. The inside of the cup was stained with a faint layer of blood. Even after 2,000 years, it still had traces of moisture. It was fresh and slow, as if it was nurturing something. The Savior's blood. Lu Cheng leaned closer and observed intently. He felt that the atmosphere around him had somehow turned sad and gloomy. The color of blood rippled continuously, as though it was filling the cup, but there was nothing in it. This thing is still somewhat miraculous. Amidst his thoughts, Lu Cheng's heart suddenly stirred. He smelled an oppressive and dangerous scent. Ever since he shattered his Jindan and fused a part of it, although he didn't have his greatest reliance, the supernatural abilities he mutated had received the strongest enhancement under his current limits. This included ice and fire, as well as his intuition to foresee danger. This was still a distance away from the legendary realm of cicada senses before the autumn wind blows, but compared to the past, it was no longer a small matter. At this moment, Lu Cheng felt like he was in an environment before a storm. Although he didn't see it with his own eyes, he could acutely sense various signs. A gentleman doesn't stand under a collapsing wall. Leave immediately. He made a prompt decision, turned around and left, leaving the dumbfounded blonde Trish behind. Sir, wait a minute. Did I make a mistake in my explanation?" Trish chased after him and asked in puzzlement. "I just remembered that I have something urgent to do," Lu Cheng replied perfunctorily. After pausing for a moment, he continued, "I have a few friends coming over soon. Can you help explain? Can I trouble you to wait in the lounge and not do anything else for the time being?" Trish nodded happily. "Sure, no problem." Lu Cheng didn't linger. With his hands by his side, he strode back to the door, brushing past the blonde, blue-eyed youth who had come to take over his shift. Oblak glanced at him and entered the exhibition hall without much thought. His mind was filled with the finals that night. After a few steps, he suddenly paused and whipped his head around to look at the Chinese man he had just met. Lu Qing? Lu Qing. The Chinese heavenly son of China who made him taste the most bitter defeat of his life? Wasn't he heavily injured and half-retired from the professional scene? Why is he here? The one I met at the chapel yesterday and found familiar is him too. In the midst of his thoughts, Oblak forgot his duty and instinctively turned around to chase after the figure that was about to disappear from his sight. His footsteps were accompanied by the faint sound of metal clashing against metal. After returning to Brudale from Gaofun, he had been paying attention to Chinese martial arts news. He finally found out who had defeated him and that he was a heavenly son of China who had received a lot of attention. That was why he walked out of his self-denial and had a goal. After a few years of hard work, he felt that he had the strength to challenge Lu Qing again. Who knew that Lu Qing would meet with an accident and fall from grace? Now that he had met him in Connecticut, he couldn't miss this opportunity. Thump, thump, thump. Oblak weaved through the men and women on the streets with heavy footsteps, quickly closing in on the figure he had been thinking about all this time. However, Lu Qing's footsteps were just as fast. He couldn't close the distance. Anxious, Oblak's arms, legs, chest, abdomen, and other parts of his body lit up with dazzling stars. They connected together and seemed to be forming a tree-like object. With a burst of dazzling light, he became the true son of Sunday. A terrifying aura enveloped Lu Qing from a distance. It was both a greeting and a hindrance. But at that moment, he felt the area around the aura become empty. It was like the darkness of the universe that could never be filled. In just an instant, the surging holy light disappeared without a trace. This. Oblak paused in surprise, his eyes filled with astonishment. In that short pause, Lu Qing had turned into another street and disappeared from his sight. Oblak was about to give chase when he suddenly heard a loud explosion. He felt the ground beneath his feet tremble powerlessly. He turned back and saw the glass windows of the church museum and the cathedral of holy light shatter. Milky white light and crimson flames burst through the dome. Screams and cries rang out one after another. Something's wrong. Oblak threw the matter of Lu Qing to the back of his mind and sprinted back to the museum. As soon as he entered, he saw half of the glass windows shattered. The floor was littered with injured, moaning lecturers and visitors. It was a mess. As he approached the raging flames, he found his good friends, Johnny and Charles. One of them was lying there with wounds all over his body. He was unconscious and his life was quickly draining away. One of them had his arm blown off. He groaned in pain as he tried to stand up, but he was powerless. Oblak's pupils shrank. He didn't have time to help his companions and ran straight for the Holy Grail. The closer he got, the more tragic the scene became. When he reached the warped independent display case, he saw his teacher, Mason Walker, the leader of the Brutar Holy Grail Knights. This middle-aged man with eyes as blue as the ocean was leaning against the display case. His chest was sunken and mostly charred. He was spitting out crimson blood. The silver cup that once held the Savior's blood was nowhere to be seen. 3 of the crown level. Mason Walker took a deep breath and let his words flow smoothly. Quick, go to the confession room and find the Archbishop. Tell him to inform the Connecticut government to send out all the crown-level mighty ones and seal off the roads out of the city. With the help of satellite detection and positioning, we need to find the Holy Grail as soon as possible. But Oblak nodded vigorously. Without asking any more questions, he turned and ran in the direction of the Holy Top Church. He now understood why the robbery of the Holy Grail happened at this time. Usually, the 2 crown-level mighty ones from the Brutar delegation would take turns guarding the Holy Grail. Together with the Archbishop Kontsev in the church next door, they could hold off the attackers until help arrived. But every day at this time was the Archbishop's fixed confession time. He would cut off his senses and listen wholeheartedly to the teachings of God. When he passed by the museum's lounge, he saw a blonde girl sitting there in a daze from the corner of his eye. She seemed to be in great shock. Lu Qing didn't care what happened. He ran straight back to the campus of Connecticut University and to Yen Zhika's classroom. Seeing that everything was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. He took out his phone and browsed the news. Breaking news came in one after another. Museum attacked, Holy Grail stolen. 3 terror-level supercriminals. So that's what happened. Lu Cheng finished browsing and refreshed the page again. He saw the latest breaking news. The deliver man suspected to be among the attackers. F***CK. Lu Cheng was stunned at first and then blurted out. P.S. The religions involved in this article are fictional and have nothing to do with reality. I just saw a student talking about the Kabbalah tree and the hidden God in the book review section. In the end, I was swallowed by Chidian while I was taking an afternoon nap. Scary, scary. Let's not talk about such issues. Chapter 586. After seeing the words, deliver man, Lu Cheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought, the one who cheats others will be cheated sooner or later. Back then, he was still proud of the fact that there were many imitators of the deliver man and that he had successfully cleared himself of suspicion. But in the end, such a huge scapegoat fell from the sky. Damn it. Luckily, everyone knows about my damaged potential due to my serious injuries. No one will believe that I can suddenly become a terror grade, which is the equivalent of a physical invulnerability mighty one. I won't take the blame. Lu Cheng heaved a long sigh of relief. He turned to seriously pondering the matter. The more he thought about it, the more puzzled he felt. Strange. He muttered, frowning. There were 2 strange points. First, the greatest value of the Holy Grail was that it was stained with a little of the Savior's blood. It was of great symbolic significance and enlightenment to the various branches of the mission sect. For practitioners of other systems, such as martial artists, it could at most be used as a reference to draw parallels. It was an item that was worth losing. As for the research institutions of major countries, they had no lack of similar items rooted in their own country. There was no need for them to get the Holy Grail. Second, the attacker chose to attack at a relatively busy time in the morning. This was indeed the time when the security system was most likely to be negligent. But it was also not a good time for them. It was too eye-catching and obvious. They couldn't kill people calmly, remove the surveillance, erase the traces, and eliminate the influence. They would definitely leave behind many clues. With so many physical invulnerability mighty ones in Connecticut and many with amazing means, they would be in great danger if they couldn't leave the area immediately. And it wasn't easy to escape from Connecticut immediately. No matter how fast a physical invulnerability mighty one could run, they couldn't outrun the speed of radio transmission. In broad daylight, the Connecticut government wouldn't be slow to respond. As long as they mobilized their so-called terror-grade mighty ones to cooperate with the police and the National Guard to seal off the main entrances and exits, check the strength of the passers-by, one by one, and prevent them from taking advantage of the situation. In addition, with satellites and other high-tech equipment monitoring the farmland, lakes, rivers, and other sparsely populated areas, it would be very difficult for them to leave the country without any means of control. In other words, this was a matter that risked many times more than the benefits. That was why the Brutal delegation dared to have the real Holy Grail on tour in America. Another purpose? Lu Cheng shook his head slightly. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. The Holy Grail had been in Brutal's possession for hundreds of years, but they had not produced any valuable results. Who would be willing to take the risk for an illusory hope? Since he couldn't figure it out, he couldn't be bothered to think about it. In any case, it had nothing to do with him. Lu Cheng lit up the dim screen of his phone and shared the entire story with his little fairy girl, who was still in class. He also informed the military liaison personnel. Incidents involving physical invulnerability experts were worthy of the attention of the country. At this moment, Connecticut had entered the highest state of alert. All departing flights at Orion Airport were postponed, and all departing passengers were rechecked to confirm their strength. On the bridge across the river, police had set up checkpoints to prevent cars from passing by. Below, warships patrolled back and forth, scanning the water with sonar and other devices. On the other side of the river, a white-haired old man with arms thicker than the legs of others was sitting in the back of a nanny van. He was resting with his eyes closed in case of an emergency. He was none other than the grand elder of the Jaruga sect, Stefan. The sparkling lake swayed. Ships from the naval base spread out, using all kinds of high-tech equipment to complete the blockade. On the deck of their flagship, a brown-haired middle-aged man in a general's uniform crossed his arms and looked coldly in the direction of Connecticut. The ripples around him stopped, sparkling. Satellites outside the atmosphere were closely monitoring the places where the city was connected to the farms, the wilderness, and so on. Once a person appeared, they would immediately report and track him. Other than that, there were other arrangements. Because of the existence of powerful humans, the development of technology had always been in the direction of restricting them. In the church museum with broken windows and a dome that exposed the sky, Archbishop Kantsev, who was obviously of Latin descent, stood in front of a warped display case. He sighed. The Lord often teaches us not to overlook today's misfortune because of yesterday's good fortune. We have been careless because nothing has happened before. Another crown-level strongman from the Brutal delegation, Townsend, drew a cross in front of his chest in sincere repentance. Normally, when the Archbishop was confessing, he should have been with Mason Walker. But after so many days of smooth sailing, everyone felt that everything was normal and that there would be no accidents, so he was lazy. Oblak stood quietly by the side, waiting for the notification from the Connecticut Command Center. At this moment, he felt something and turned his head to look at the entrance of Exhibition Hall No. 1. He saw 3 men in black robes slowly approaching. The leader was tall, with indiscernible wrinkles on his forehead, eyes, and cheeks. His hair and eyes were pale white. Oblak glanced at him and felt that he was very close, very noble, and very trustworthy. On the left side of the old man was a man with emerald eyes and an illusory aura. He had a scholarly air about him. He was the light mentor of the spiritualist order, Lucas. Could that be the world-famous grand mentor of the spiritualist order, Cisco? After making eye contact with Kantsev, the old man smiled and said, "I'm here to meet the spirit of this place." There was no ripple in Kantsev's eyes. He humbly drew a cross and said, "May the Lord bless you." "What a vicious curse," said the old man with a smile. "Wherever they go, they leave traces. I believe that the 3 attackers will be caught. This is a challenge to the order of society. This is a challenge to the stability of America and Connecticut. The Holy Grail contains the blood of the Savior. It is closely related to us." Kantsev looked deeply into his eyes and said calmly, "It can be fooled for a while, but it won't be fooled forever. 2 days at most. Cisco, I hope this will help you." The grand mentor of the spiritualist order, Cisco nodded slightly and said no more. He focused on channeling to track down the culprits. In the bedroom on the 2nd floor, Yenjika, who was studying for her final exams, looked up and discussed the Holy Grail incident with Lu Cheng, who was leisurely playing with his phone. At the end of the conversation, she gently thumped the table and sighed. "What a pity. I haven't even seen what the Holy Grail looks like." Due to their beliefs, the Holy Grail couldn't be photographed during the exhibition. They couldn't view it online unless they went to see it live. "It looks very ordinary." Lu Cheng excitedly took a pen and paper and drew for Yenjika. After a few strokes, he handed it to her as if he was presenting a treasure. "That's it." Yenjika glanced at it and immediately pursed her pink lips to prevent herself from laughing out loud. After holding it in for a dozen seconds, she nodded solemnly. "Cheng, your drawing skills? Your calligraphy is better than your drawing." "My calligraphy is bad enough." Lu Cheng shook his head in amusement. "I don't accept such compliments." Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt a throbbing sensation. He stood up with a thoughtful expression. "What's wrong?" Yenjika blinked her clear eyes. "We have guests," replied Lu Cheng with a smile as he slowly walked to the door. After a few steps, he turned back and said to the girl, "Let's go down together. It's safer to be close to each other in case any accidents happen." But Yenjika nodded obediently and reached out to hold Lu Cheng's left hand. When the couple reached the 1st floor, the girl and Aunt Du sat on the sofa in the living room while Lu Cheng walked to the door and pulled it open. The door creaked open. Oblak, who was about to press the doorbell, froze. "Excuse me, is there anything I can help you with?" Lu Qing already knew what was going on. Beside Oblak, the white-haired, blue-eyed grand teacher looked over with a smile and spoke warmly. "Just a routine investigation." In that instant, Lu Qing felt an incomparable closeness and respect for the grand teacher. He wanted nothing more than to prostrate himself on the ground and confess his thoughts and repent of his past mistakes. With a change of thought, he outlined the confrontation formula and calmed his body and mind, dispelling the emotions that weren't considered negative. "If only I knew," replied Lu Qing with a smile. His gaze was calm and his expression was leisurely. To the grand teacher, he was like an ordinary auntie in the neighborhood committee, completely unaffected. Block was taken aback. Cisco asked calmly, "You've been going to the Holy Top Church a lot recently." "But to find ways to calm my mind," answered Lu Qing truthfully. Lu Qing answered half truthfully and half jokingly. He then casually explained, "You should know that I've suffered a lot of serious setbacks this year." He was indeed looking for ways to break through to the physical invulnerability stage. Once he reached the physical invulnerability stage, his mind would undoubtedly find peace. Yeah, that's right. Lu Qing wasn't disappointed or pessimistic. When he talked about the terrifying setbacks that had almost forced him out of the professional circle, he spoke as if he was an observer. Not only was Oblak surprised, but even the grand teacher's eyes flickered. "In this aspect, us spirit practitioners might be more useful than churches," said Cisco casually. "So, why did you go to the museum to see the Holy Grail today?" Cisco asked casually before asking, "Why did you go to the museum to see the Holy Grail?" "Out of curiosity. For reference. I was supposed to go with my girlfriend on the weekend, but I happened to be free in the morning, so I decided to take a look in advance to prepare for our date," said Lu Qing frankly. The grand teacher paused for a few seconds. His eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "You left suddenly before the attack. Did you know something beforehand?" Lu Qing smiled with a heart as cold as ice. "According to my data, I have 3 superpowers. One of them is the ability to foresee danger. Because I didn't know what kind of danger it was, I could only leave first and warn you later. This may seem selfish, but I don't think it's a crime, right?" Cisco nodded slowly and asked for confirmation. "In other words, before the crown-level Mason Walker discovered the danger, you already predicted it?" Oblak subconsciously held his breath as soon as the words left his mouth. Lu Qing nodded calmly. "You could say that. P.S. Hey, I'll update in advance for you guys today. Looking for monthly votes." Chapter 587. You can say that? As the disciple of the crown-level Mighty One, Mason Walker, Oblak felt humiliated by Lu Qing's reply. However, when he looked up, he saw that Lu Qing was neither arrogant nor boastful. Lu Qing was describing the menu calmly, as though he was describing what was on the menu tonight. This wasn't boasting or bragging. It was the truth. Oblak took a deep breath and told himself that blacksmiths were good at forging, tailors were good at making clothes, and everyone had their own unique strengths. A king wasn't better than a commoner in every aspect. After quietly listening to Lu Qing's reply, Grand Teacher Cisco smiled. "I understand." After that, he nodded and left the door at an unhurried pace. Oblak was in charge of the aftermath. With a solemn expression, he said to Lu Qing, "That's all for questioning. Thank you for your cooperation. If necessary, we will visit again." Since the grand teacher didn't say anything, it meant that Lu Qing wasn't lying. "Okay." Lu Qing nodded casually. Oblak stared at him deeply. Without another word, he turned around and chased after Cisco. Originally, he wanted to take this opportunity to bring up the matter of a challenge. However, the first reason was that the Holy Grail had been stolen, which was a serious matter. As a member of the Order of Knights, he couldn't just think about his personal matters and ignore the bigger picture. The second reason was that he suddenly felt uncertain in his heart, as if he had lost his confidence. That was why he didn't say anything even though he wanted to. Although Lu Qing isn't at the crown level, he's still at the same level as me. However, he's a level higher than me. He has a sense of transcendence. Oblak's face darkened as he entered the car. After watching them leave, Lu Cheng closed the door and returned to the living room. Yenjika stood up and leaned over. She mimicked Lu Cheng's tone and said, "You can say that. Cheng, you're really awesome." "Why do I feel like you're mocking me?" Lu Cheng looked at Ku, amused. "That guy just now was Oblak, the one who came to Galfan before. I saw in his eyes that he wasn't convinced and wanted to fight me again. I had no choice but to put on a show to scare him away. Otherwise, with only 70 to 80% of my strength, I might not be his match." Yenjika rolled her eyes. "You still remember who he is?" "Of course. Those were the days when we traveled freely. I'll never forget it." Lu Cheng laughed. "The moment I saw the Brutale delegation, I remembered him. I was chased around the streets by him this morning." Yenjika pursed her lips and turned her head. She smiled and said, "I remember him too." At this time, Aunt Du returned to her own room and left the place to the young couple. Yenjika looked around. She looked at Lu Cheng. The meaning behind his words was self-evident. "I'll go check what's in the fridge and freezer." Lu Cheng lowered his head and smiled. As he walked towards the kitchen, he thought, "There are still some dumplings and noodles left from yesterday. Should I make dumpling noodles?" "What are you doing here?" Lu Cheng took off his apron and put it on. "You're making supper for your wife. I'm going to make supper for my darling." Yenjika chuckled. "You're such a glutton. You want to steal my food every time. Well, I think my egg fried rice is as good as yours. How about a bowl of egg fried rice?" "The big bowl," Lu Cheng answered with a big smile in his eyes. Just like that, the couple kept each other busy. They exchanged a few words from time to time. Cheng, are you going back to Songqing soon?" Yenjika asked as she cracked the eggs. "Yes, I have to go back and get the certificate. I even skipped the oral examination, so I can't skip this. Besides, there's another thing that needs to be settled, you know." Lu Cheng looked at the pot of boiling water and added fuel to the fire. "Then I'll go and meet Dirty Tong and the others," Yenjika said happily. She paused for a few seconds and bit her lower lip. Then she said with melancholy, "I'm going to start learning from my tutor next semester. I'll be busy." "You're going to enter the professional circle again. You'll be busy too. Why don't we go on a trip this summer? We can ask for the Love Lock, the pyramids, and the grassland. What do you think?" Although Lu Cheng was a little confused by his wife's sudden change of topic, he quickly recovered. He poured the dumplings into the pot and said, "Okay, we'll come up with a strategy later." "Okay, let's go to Songqing first and then back to Xioshan. We'll stay at home until August so that my dad won't be angry." Yenjika thought about the plan while frying the eggs. In the end, she said, "Cheng, I've recently found an animal that I like." "What animal?" "Bro Flat Top." "What's that?" "Honey badger, white hair and silver cape. Its motto is, if you're not in a fight, you're on your way to a fight. Oh, and don't tell me who the enemy is. Tell me how many there are. Tell me the time and place." "Sounds interesting." "Yeah, and, hey Ku, it's time for your egg fried rice. I can faintly smell something burning. Ouch." After a while, a voice sounded in the restaurant again. Cheng, who are you talking to on WeChat?" "Smith and me." "Spider, what did he say?" "He asked me why my alert level suddenly changed back to dangerous. He said he's going to monitor me 24/7 again." "You kept laughing just now. What did you say?" "I said because I bragged in front of the great teacher." "Pfft, what did he say?" "He said F***K, huh, who on earth did he learn Chinese from?" In the collection room of a luxurious villa, a deep voice was speaking in an excited and intoxicated tone. "There are billions of people in the world, and I'm the only one who has evolved such an ability. By absorbing the blood of others, I obtain the corresponding ability. It's the ability of God." This was a thin man wearing a black tuxedo and a dark red cape. His facial features were deep, and his eyes were red. In his hand was an ancient silver cup that seemed to be filled with blood, but it was also empty. "Yes, it's so special that they never thought that the people you killed had their eyes cut out from their foreheads. It wasn't a cult ritual, but just a disguise. Your real goal is their blood. It's their special trait. Isn't that right, Nightmare? Opposite the man in the dark red cape was a brown-eyed man drinking champagne. He was in his 30s or 40s and dressed meticulously. The handkerchief in front of his chest pocket was folded into a flower. Yes, thank you for your help, Godslayer. The man in the dark red cape laughed out loud. When I extract the blood of the Savior, absorb it, and digest it, I'll truly enter the terror grade. In the future, I'll replace that old guy from the Samano royal family and become the emperor of the sanguine race. Having said that, he looked to the other side. There stood a man with dark skin and a beard who had features that were very characteristic of the Dead Sea. The man in the dark red cape pressed his right hand to his chest and bowed elegantly. Thank you. Thank you for letting me show the strength of the terror grade at the last minute, confusing many people. Pharaoh thinks highly of you, the bearded man said with a serious expression. The bearded man said with a serious expression, in 2 months, he has a big operation and needs your help. No problem, as long as my absorption goes smoothly. The man in the dark red cape smiled and watched as the bearded man walked to the ancient coffin in the corner. He took off his clothes, wrapped himself in a bandage and lay inside. He lost all signs of life, turning into a real old mummy. Look, there's no attacker here. There's only the collection of mummies bought by the collector, Mr. Constantine. The man in the dark red cape smiled smugly. He asked the brown-eyed man, Godslayer, why did you agree to cooperate? The Godslayer touched his nose with his index finger and said, maybe, it's more interesting to have one more terror baddie in this world. At this moment, the sound of knocking came from the surveillance system. The man in the dark red cape glanced and said, it's Lucas. After that, he opened the door of the collection room and returned to the living room to let the black-robed, green-eyed spirit cultivator, Lucas, enter. What did the great teacher ask you to do? The man in the dark red cape asked. Lucas looked at him calmly and said, Constantine, the great teacher asked me to tell you that in 2 days, at most 2 days, more than 10 terror-grade masters, a few special forces equipped with man-made weapons and various high-tech equipment, and more special agents who are good at tracking will arrive in Connecticut. The uniqueness of the Holy Grail can't be hidden for long. You have to complete the absorption before this deadline and try not to damage the Holy Grail too much. When the time comes, as long as you return it secretly, the security level will be lowered. If this situation continues, no one can take it. Don't think that you can avoid the road. There are eyes watching from the sky. The more deserted a place is, the more obvious it is. The man in the dark red cape, Constantine, was silent for a moment. He raised the Holy Grail and smiled. A few days later, Lu Cheng keenly sensed from the news that the security level in Connecticut had been lowered. Hence, he sent a message to Smith. The Holy Grail has been found? The 3 terror-grade attackers have been caught? After a while, Smith replied, apparently, the Holy Grail has been found. It's in a trash can. It's a little damaged. We've only confirmed the identity of the assailant, but we haven't found out who it is. Among the assailants are the Godslayer and the Nightmare. In short, this matter has come to an end. Come to an end? Come to an end just like that? Lu Cheng was surprised. Such a serious matter had come to an end just like that? Or was there something brewing under the surface? Before he could ask further, Smith sent a message. Lu, I want to ask you something. Go ahead, Lu Cheng answered generously. Smith was puzzled. I've been practicing according to the awakening and improvement of superpowers but haven't made any progress for more than a year. I'm getting further and further away from the dangerous grade. Lu, do you have any good suggestions? I find you more and more mysterious and hard to guess. Find a few exotic spiders to bite you? Lu Cheng joked. That's not funny at all. Smith replied. Lu Cheng pondered for a moment and said, actually, the improvement of superpowers is related to the strengthening of your self. The better control of your body, the easier it is to go deeper. I suggest you awaken your self-spirit. I'm from the mission. Smith emphasized helplessly. Why does Lu feel so unreliable? An ascetic from one of the branches of the mission sect can be used as a reference. Lu Qing stopped teasing. After putting down his phone, he looked out of the window and thought leisurely, the matter of the Holy Grail has come to an end. Ku will be taking her final exams next. After that, she will return to Songqing and meet up with her master to look for the secret residence of the Longhu Immortal at the bottom of Weishui Lake. P.S. Damn it, Chidian's back end is drawing. I could have brought it forward. Begging for votes. Chapter 588. At the end of June, the new campus of Songqing University. It feels like I haven't been here for a long time. Yenjika stood on the long bridge, gazing at the Weishui Lake illuminated by street lamps, as well as the lakeside road that she and Lu Qing had walked on day after day. She felt that every scene and every corner reminded her of a different scene. The past pierced through the gap of 2 years and reappeared vividly in her mind. Lu Qing also sighed and echoed, I haven't walked on this road for almost a year. But from time to time, she would recall the initial throbbing and the purest beauty. She would think about how hard it was to come by and tell herself not to get used to it, but to cherish and protect it. Let's go, big sister invites you to take a walk again. Yenjika's eyes lit up, smiling as she extended her slender right hand. Lu Qing grabbed it and looked ahead. He coughed twice and chuckled. I remember that every time you took the initiative to invite me to take a walk by the lake, you were hinting and tacitly allowing me to be intimate. What about today? Yenjika's eyes widened and her mouth was half open. Her pretty face couldn't help but blush. No way. It's all because you're such a hooligan. I'm not going to take a walk with you, she added bitterly as she tried to pull her hand back. However, Lu Qing's grip was so tight that she couldn't break free no matter how hard she tried. She had no choice but to grit her teeth and follow him from the other end of the bridge to the lakeside. She followed the memories of the past, crossed familiar scenes, and wandered the intertwining journey between reality and illusion. Holding hands, first kissing, the girl taking out the tissue and the boy cleaning the wooden bench, the casual gossip, the inexperience of sneaking a few kisses every night after taking a stroll. Suddenly, Yenjika and Lu Qing seemed to have walked into the gap between the past and the present. Luckily we're still together. Otherwise, it would definitely be very, very regretful. Yenjika suddenly said and sighed with emotion. That kind of regret would be a wound that wouldn't heal for the rest of their lives. Lu Qing's fingers moved slightly and tightly interlocked with his little fairies. He solemnly promised, we'll always walk on this road. Yes, yes. Yenjika nodded vigorously. After a few more steps, Lu Qing pointed to the side of the road and chuckled. This is where I found Qing Yu and the golden core. Here? Yenjika's eyebrows relaxed. She looked over curiously and whispered. She stared at it for a few seconds, then suddenly turned sideways to face the lake. She put her palms together, closed her eyes, and began to chant. Ku, what are you doing? Lu Qing asked blankly. The girl's dimples appeared. She pursed her lips slightly and smiled sweetly. I'm thanking Qing Yu. If it wasn't for it, a certain idiot might have retreated on his own. This is the cause of everything. It probably won't like you saying that. A bad life is better than a good death. Lu Qing laughed and shook his head. Then he cleared his throat and said, the real reason was that I saw you standing outside the martial arts club in your Han Chinese costume and finally plucked up the courage to strike up a conversation with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come running by the lake. Yenjika rolled her starry eyes and asked him back with a funny smile, could this be the lyrics of the song, just because I took an extra look at you in the crowd? Her voice was clear and delicate, and her voice was beautiful. Lu Qing listened with a smile and teased, Cuckoo, are you whispering sweet nothings to me? If you say so, then so be it. Yenjika put her hands behind her back and walked forward lightly. The couple circled the lake, revisiting the places where they had been intimate before. After calming down the heat on their faces and the rhythm of their breathing, they finally waited for Geyser. He was still old, but the frequency of his coughing had obviously decreased. Although the 9 words formula had not completely healed his old injuries, it had eased him a lot. Let's get into the water. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. Shi Jiangwo admitted frankly. Yenjika covered her mouth and laughed. She felt that this pair of master and disciple were very similar in some aspects. They were a family, and they would enter the same house. Am I scolding myself, unreliable old man? Lu Cheng thought to himself. He took out his phone, wallet and other things and handed them to his wife. After thinking for a moment, Geezer Shi felt that there was no need to pretend to be a master. He also left his phone behind and walked into the lake step by step. The cold air around him condensed into crystals, as if it was going to freeze his body but not affect his movements. Lu Cheng imitated him. After taking a deep breath, every inch of his skin shone with cold light. The master and disciple walked further and further away. Less and less of their body parts were exposed to the water. Finally, they steadied their center of gravity and completely disappeared in front of Yenjika. Light rippled around him and a faint pressure came. Lu Cheng let his body enter the embryonic state, just like when he practiced underwater to seek the mutation of his root pulp. At his current level, there was no problem for him to stay underwater for 10 to 20 minutes. In the swaying of the lush water plants, Geezer Shi's mouth opened and opened, stirring up ripples. The ripples flowed to Lu Cheng in circles and brought a voice that seemed to come from the horizon. The bottom of the lake is quite big. I did a rough search last time and didn't find anything. Are we going to search inch by inch this time? Lu Cheng replied in the form of voice transmission, Master, think about it. The black carp swallowed the Jindan and it must have acted up on the spot. The range of its swimming and jumping is limited. We may find something in the area near the spot where we found it. If we can't find it, I'll give you a big slap. Geezer Shi always felt that his disciple was unreliable most of the time. Moving forward slowly with their feet on the ground, Lu Cheng and Geezer Shi looked around in the dark, sparkling water. They tried to discern the peculiarities and formed ice mirror or enemy heart freezing move to comprehend the finer details. After searching around the area near the lake, Geezer Shi suddenly stopped. He frowned and said in the form of voice transmission, You don't say. The feeling here is a little different from the last time I was here. It seems to be changing according to the phase of the moon. The problem couldn't be found by searching alone. But after comparing the two, the abnormality appeared. With his strong night vision, Lu Cheng grasped the faint light under the water and looked around. He had a panoramic view of the entire area. Gravel, rocks, swaying water plants, and rubbish thrown down by someone. Other than these, there was nothing else, not to mention a place that looked like the entrance of a cave. After a few seconds of silence, Lu Cheng followed the plan he had prepared. He formed a hand seal with his hands and changed it continuously. The visualized ancient characters in his mind jumped as well. Confrontation. Army. Do. Swordsman. He opened his mouth and his voice shook the surroundings, making the water undulate in a regular manner. Wholeness. Formation. Deference. Forward. Attainment. As soon as the word attainment came out, the 9 seal scripts in the depths of Lu Cheng's mind appeared at the same time. They combined to form the 3-dimensional, mysterious rune. Rumble. At this moment, a low buzzing sound came from somewhere. As the water rippled, the bottom of the lake formed by gravel and rocks cracked open, revealing a stone staircase that extended downwards. A camouflage set up with the help of the moon. Geezer Shi commented with disdain, Brat, the night you got the Jindan was when the moon was waning, right? And the black carp doesn't have much intelligence. I don't remember. Lu Cheng answered honestly. What else do you remember? Geezer Shi shook his head and laughed. He walked along the stone staircase into the cave. It was moist inside, but there was no water. Lu Cheng suppressed the surge of emotions in his heart and followed his master to the bottom. He saw a simple and empty stone room. There was only a cloud bed here. On it were a few pieces of yellowed paper and a tattered feather robe. It doesn't look like the cave residence of Longhu Immortal. Geezer Shi, who had seen many relics of cultivation, frowned and whispered. Lu Cheng looked around and guessed. Maybe it's a place for seclusion. The feather robe seemed to be worn by Longhu Immortal before he died. What about his body? It's possible. Geezer sure approached and was about to pick up the feather robe. However, the light breeze caused the robe to instantly decay and scatter in the stone room. The notebooks, on the other hand, were still intact. Lu Cheng looked at them and read the words on the first page. My life is coming to an end. 130 years of hard work is all in vain. What a pity, what a pity. Predecessors sought the independence of the soul and tried to give birth to a baby in the Jindan. They wanted to break free from the shackles of the body and travel between heaven and earth. Unfortunately, for thousands of years, no one succeeded. I didn't follow this path. I imitated the immortal world to form the Jindan and sought longevity. However, the road ahead was boundless and full of dangers. It ended here. Geezer sure flipped over the other pages and read quickly. At the end, the master and disciple finally understood what Longhu Immortal did and why his Jindan was preserved until today. According to what Longhu Immortal said, once a cultivator passed away, the Jindan that lost the control of the spirit would either quickly lose control and explode, or barely maintain the balance and dissipate quickly. He used ice and fire to imitate yin and yang and the starry sky to form the Jindan. He wanted to reflect nature and rotate in balance, hoping to be immortal like heaven and earth. Because of this, before he passed away, he decided to give it a try. That was to reverse the spirit and feed the body back to the body, so that the body would be completely destroyed. This would ignite the spirit and completely integrate the spirit and the golden elixir into one, using the immortality of the golden elixir to achieve longevity. In consideration of the possibility of success, he changed the order of the stars inside the golden elixir and engraved the 9 words formula and his own cultivation methods inside. This idea was unprecedented. Longhu Immortal wasn't confident at all. Before he tried it, he wrote down notes for his friends to refer to as a trial and error. As for what happened in the middle, Lu Cheng and Geezer sure didn't know. They only saw the final result, which was that Longhu Immortal didn't live forever. The Jindan didn't have an independent will, but it was strangely preserved until now. Chapter 589. Lu Cheng and Geezer sure retracted their gazes and surveyed their surroundings. They didn't discover anything else. Even after using Ice Mirror and Enemy Heart Freezing Move to sense their surroundings and the 9 words formula to seek resonance, they still found nothing. Where's Longhu Immortal's natal artifact? Whispered Shizheng. Lu Cheng thought for a moment and said, maybe the Longhu Immortal sect doesn't have a natal artifact due to their unique method of pill formation. That Gu Hui who attacked me wouldn't be so careless as to not use such a powerful artifact. That makes sense. Cough, you've improved your judgment. Geezer sure couldn't help but sigh. Lu Cheng was annoyed and amused at the same time. Master, don't think of me as the student who just started learning martial arts. I'm already close to physical invulnerability. After so many years of practicing martial arts, participating in so many competitions, and experiencing so many things, how could my judgment and knowledge not improve? So what? Even if you reach physical invulnerability, you're still my disciple. Geezer sure glared at him. He didn't continue the topic and changed the topic. Have you finished reading all the confidential information? Is it useful? After Lu Cheng decided to walk the path of blending martial arts and cultivation, Comrade Shi Jiangwo used his connections to obtain the collected remnants of cultivation and over 30 volunteer experiment reports from several major military human research institutes. This helped him further grasp the essence and details of his cultivation. This is also the other reason why I've become mysterious in the eyes of others. Lu Cheng sighed inwardly. After a few seconds of silence, he said, I've finished reading it, but I still can't figure out the most crucial part. If it were so easy to figure it out, our country would have long had a cultivator town security team. Geezer sure laughed and scolded him. Others have spent decades to achieve what they have now. You want to surpass them in a month or two. I just want to find the point that suits me the most. I don't necessarily need to understand the entire system and study it thoroughly. Lu Cheng explained with a bitter smile. Geezer sure waved his hand. All right, let's talk outside. There doesn't seem to be anything useful here. Lu Qing nodded slightly. He turned to the cloud bed and bowed solemnly. He wanted to tell Longhu Immortal the result and tell him that this was the wrong path. But in the end, he couldn't bear it and only sighed softly. Thank you for finding the way for me. Senior, thank you for giving me this opportunity. After bowing 3 times, Lu Qing collected his thoughts and followed his master out of the abode. Sigh, the path of longevity, the path of longevity. Geezer Sure stood at the entrance and sighed. With a wave of his palm, he collapsed the surroundings and buried Longhu Immortal. In his mind, she was dead and buried. Step by step, they walked back to the shore. The master and disciple shook off the layer of ice that had condensed on their bodies and evaporated the remaining water. Except for their wrinkled clothes, they were no different from before they went into the lake. Yenjika heaved a sigh of relief and walked up to them, returning their belongings. Lu Qing used his palm as an iron to flatten his clothes with white steam swirling around him. He asked his master a few questions. When Geezer Sure was far away, he turned on his phone screen and entered the app. He cleared his thoughts and took notes. He said, in Longhu Immortal's last words, reflect nature, and be immortal like heaven and earth, reminded me of something. Back then, when I developed, extended, and improved his celestial star system and regarded all the stars as fire force, and the darkness of the universe as the counterpart of ice force, I felt that I was connected to the universe in a more subtle way. Perhaps, it was the secret that I could communicate with the universe after I formed the core formation. After saying this, he looked at Yenjika beside him and said, half explaining and half translating his voice into words, at that time, I felt that it was quite miraculous and I should remember it. But later on, I didn't have a similar feeling and gradually forgot about it. If it weren't for Longhu Immortal's words today, I'm afraid I wouldn't have remembered it until you achieved Dan equilibrium. Longhu Immortal's thought process of moving the stars, changing the layout, and writing the 9 words formula and cultivation techniques in the Jin Dan can be used as a reference. This way, I can naturally use the 9 words formula, force concentration, and fighting formula when I'm at Dan equilibrium. Just thinking about it makes me excited. When that time comes, I'll be a superhuman with extraordinary strength. Yenjika burst into laughter and her dimples bloomed like flowers. She felt warm at the thought of Lu Qing writing down his thoughts and thoughts in front of her. After translating each line, Lu Qing read it twice from the beginning and saved it after making some slight changes. He turned to his little fairy and said, now we're just waiting for you to make up for the innate stage, understand withdraw, and achieve Dan equilibrium. When that time comes, I'll be able to observe the details and verify them. Oh. Yenjika pretended not to care, but her beautiful black eyes looked up. Have you talked to Dirty Tong and the others? Are you going to sleep with them? Lu Qing grabbed her delicate hand and walked back to the bridge. We've already talked about it. I'm going to sleep with Ru. Besides, the new girl in their dormitory is already doing her internship in Songqing. She stays in the city at night and won't come back, Yenjika replied with a smile. Lu Qing was about to say something when his right foot suddenly became heavy as if it was carrying a 1,000-pound rock. This made him lose his balance and stagger. He swayed his center of gravity and steadied himself easily. He looked at his wife beside him and asked, what's going on? Under the light of the street lamps and the surrounding darkness, Yenjika's face was delicate and beautiful. Her long and black eyelashes trembled as she answered innocently, what do you mean what's going on? I don't know. At this point, she couldn't help but turn her head and look to the side. She covered her mouth and let out a series of clear and pleasant laughter. Lu Qing suddenly understood. He said with surprise and joy, you've awakened your supernatural ability? The supernatural ability inherited from the 2 elders of the Ji family and the Empress Dowager? Compared to brother-in-law, Ku should have awakened her supernatural ability more easily. The reason why it hadn't appeared was because she was born with a deficiency. Now that her supernatural ability had awakened, did it mean that she had already made up for her deficiency? Didn't I look tired the past 2 days? You thought I was suffering from exam syndrome and massaged me the whole time. Yenjika raised her chin and answered with a smile, I was going to give you a surprise later, but I couldn't hold back just now. Awesome. You're indeed Coach Yen. What kind of supernatural ability is it? Lu Qing asked, giving her a thumbs up. Well, it's related to the Earth's magnetic field. There are changes in attraction and repulsion, light and heavy. Yenjika rolled her eyes and answered thoughtfully. So your congenital deficiency is gone? Lu Qing asked with concern. The girl pursed her lips and said proudly, Of course. I feel like I'm about to understand the meaning of withdraw. So fast. Lu Qing blurted out in surprise. Then he received the look of his wife. Huh? What did you say? He quickly changed his words and nodded with a normal expression. You're right. You've been at the top of the professional ninth pin for more than 2 years, and you've been enduring the torture of your congenital deficiency. You've never changed your love for martial arts. You've worked hard and fought hard for it. Your willpower is strong enough. You admire me, right? Yenjika raised her head and flipped her hair, pretending to be proud and complacent. She added silently in her heart, I practice martial arts not only because I like it, but also because I want to accompany you and do something for you. Even if it's difficult for me to reach the inhuman stage in the future, it's enough. Lu Qing was overjoyed and praised. He was criticized for his exaggeration, but the girl was smiling contentedly. Just like the past, the two of them said goodbye outside the female dormitory. Yenjika found the dormitory that had been moved once. Under Zhong Yenru's guidance, she saw Li Liantong and Shi Xiangyang. Wow, your skin is so good. It's white, tender and smooth. Li Liantong's eyes widened. She leaned close and praised, Is this the effect of being nourished frequently? But, can you not be so dirty when you talk? Let me get used to it first. Yenjika replied, annoyed and amused at the same time. This is the result of cultivation, not what you said. Really? Li Liantong looked at her friend from head to toe and clicked her tongue. I don't believe you. Your figure is better too. I want a boyfriend so much. At this moment, Shi Xiangyang ignored her and hugged Yenjika. She praised, you're indeed fairer, softer and more fragrant. Zhong Yenru mocked Li Liantong. Dirty Tong has always been ambitious and incompetent. She has a lot of theoretical knowledge, but she doesn't dare to put it into practice at all. I don't like those who like me, and I don't like those who like me. What can I do? I'm also very desperate. Li Liantong spread her hands and answered. You have to try if you like those who like you. How do you know if they don't like you if you don't try? My silly Chung always says, what if? Yenjika reminded him, exasperated at his failure to meet her expectations. Li Liantong was about to answer when she suddenly remembered her friend's words. She thought for a while and asked in confusion, what did you just say? Cultivation? Have you been reading too many novels? Do you think I'm stupid? Cultivation is different from martial arts. For ordinary girls, they can only cultivate their spirit and use their spirit to nourish their body. Although they can't cultivate much strength, their skin will be better and whiter, and there won't be any pimples left. Yenjika described. When Lu Qing was at his lowest point, he thought of starting a simplified cultivation beauty class, but he didn't have the mood to think about the details. When the sequelae were cured and his strength recovered, he didn't need to do this. Instead, he gradually improved the class in his daily discussions with Yenjika, making it easy to get started and not difficult to cultivate. Of course, he didn't expect to strengthen his body very well either. Really? Li Liantong, Zhong Yenru and Shi Xiangyang asked in surprise and doubt. Qing did it. His martial arts are mixed with cultivation. Yenjika nodded with a solemn expression. Wow! Li Liantong exclaimed. Can we practice it? Of course, Qing specially made it simplified. Yenjika answered with a little pride. I want to make a portrait of your Cheng. Sooner or later. Li Liantong paced back and forth excitedly. So did Zhong Yenru and Shi Xiangyang. Don't be like that. He's still alive. Yenjika covered her face and laughed. After 10 minutes, Li Liantong, Zhong Yenru and Shi Xiangyang sat cross-legged on their respective beds. Yenjika made hand seals and constantly changed the position of her feet. Confrontation. 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 Seeing that Dirty Tong and the others had calmed down and obtained a tranquil state of mind, Yenjika withdrew her stance and glanced left and right. She felt the same as when Lu Cheng saw a group of foreigners wearing Taoist robes and practicing cultivation. Why do I feel like they're spreading a cult? Chapter 590. Kai Zhongming and the others had moved out of the dormitory because of the new students moving in and the use of the West Dormitory garden. However, Lu Cheng was still an intern, so a bed was reserved for him. At the door of room 502, Unit 1, Building 6, he heard the noise and the strong smell of alcohol before he entered. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow are the graduation photos and certificates. Are these guys going crazy for the last time? Lu Cheng smiled and pushed the door open. Kai Zhongming was holding a paper cup in one hand and a small bottle of Red Star Erguotu in the other. He was not surprised to see his bad friend come back. He looked at him up and down and said, "Cheng, you've recovered pretty well. I didn't know you were hurt before." "You didn't believe me when I told you last time," replied Lu Cheng with a smile. He extended his hand and patted Little Ming's shoulder. Little Ming jumped, grimaced in pain, and almost staggered. "You're taking revenge. How long has it been? You still remember?" Kai Zhongming moved his arm angrily. "Revenge is a dish best served cold. You're going to go home and be a tycoon. You won't get another chance like this again," said Lu Cheng half jokingly and half emotionally. As they were about to leave school, most of their former roommates had found a home. Zhao Chang had successfully applied for postgraduate studies and had begun to take private jobs. Zhang Jingye had his wish fulfilled and stayed in Songqing. He had entered a branch of a large company. Although the company was famous for its overtime work, the salary was really good. Old Qiu Zhigao, had received several offers, but he was not satisfied. In the end, through Qin Mo's relationship, he entered a local private enterprise. The salary was not high, but it was good that he stayed in a big city. Mao Yuanxing and his girlfriend both went to a foreign company. Qin Mo got a venture capital from his father and planned to start a business first. Currently, there were two directions. One was to form a team and promote the giant company. In the meantime, he would do his own products. For example, when he persuaded the restaurant chain to accept mobile payments, he would give back his own part to the merchants and build a closer relationship with them. This would pave the way for him to sell the cashier software later. Of course, this was not the only way. The second was to invest in a local third-party payment company. Although it was currently a battle between two major powers, there were still many scattered companies. Just like some chess and card websites, large amounts of gambling funds could be easily checked. Using the official payment method was the same as courting death. Then, they would find similar third-party payments and use methods like topping up to avoid the goal of achieving the goal of money laundering. As the saying goes, every snake has its way, and every mouse has its hole. When Lu Cheng heard Qin Mo talk about this before, he had a whole new level of respect for him. He didn't expect this rich second generation who usually fooled around to be so smart. Of course, when it came to starting a business, it didn't necessarily mean success with ideas, funds, and connections. On this road, many seniors had fallen. So far, only Tang Wen, who was addicted to games, hadn't found a job. But he didn't care too much. After all, he had passed the Qinghai exam. Everything was fine. After chatting with everyone about their recent situation, Lu Cheng took out a paper cup and poured hot water into it. It was slightly cold. He looked around and said, "We have graduated and stepped into society. I hope we can all fly higher." Fly higher. The half-drunk Zhao Chang, Qiu Zhigao, and the others shouted complacently and excitedly. They gulped down the wine in their cups. After throwing water bottles and all kinds of unwanted items at each retention event, they all went limp and fell into silence. It wasn't clear whether it was because they were drunk and confused, or because they were melancholy that they could never go back to being young and frivolous. Lu Cheng looked around and laughed softly. He secretly made a hand gesture and sang the word, confrontation, like a lullaby. The atmosphere in the room became quiet. From time to time, the sound of water bottles breaking and shouts of liberation, regret, venting, and lamentation could be heard. Lu Qing took a picture of this scene and sent it to Yenjika. With one hand in each hand, he threw all his roommates back to the upper bunk, including the drunk little Ming. "Qing, why is my mind so clear? Why can't my hands and feet listen to me?" he said. Chinamo turned over on the opposite bed and answered, "Me too. My head doesn't hurt." "Did you drink fake wine?" Kai Zhongming guessed blankly. Lu Qing didn't say anything. He left the dormitory and borrowed Zhao Chang's spare bed sheet to sleep for the night. The next day, he trained by the Weishui Lake again. He tried to adjust the positions of his qi, blood, force, and spirit during force concentration so that the stars they formed would naturally form the word fighting. After the morning training, he received his bachelor's uniform. Under the gaze of many reporters and freshmen, he took graduation photos and dormitory souvenirs. Yenjika borrowed a similar outfit and was invited to take photos with her major, pretending that she was still one of them. In the end, the couple got rid of the irrelevant people and took photos in every memorable place in the new campus. In the following days, Lu Cheng and Yenjika stayed in Songqing for a few days. They revisited old haunts and returned to their old dating scenes. They tasted all kinds of familiar yet strange delicacies, making the bits and pieces in their memories more vivid. It was a pity that the spicy crab restaurant was doing worse and worse. It closed before the new year, so the couple couldn't relive their first date. They could only find a similar restaurant. At the beginning of July, they reluctantly bid farewell to Songqing and flew back to Xiushan. The first 2 to 3 years of college were very short compared to the rest of their lives. However, in Lu Cheng and Yenjika's hearts, it was the beginning of the baby bird opening its eyes and seeing the world. None of the memories could be forgotten. They would be engraved in their bones. Carrying his luggage and stepping into the house, Lu Cheng was asked as soon as he saw his mother, "Where's Jika?" "I'm your biological child." Lu Cheng replied, amused. "Mom, Jika has been in America for half a year. She has to go home. She'll come over for dinner tomorrow night." "Okay, I'll go to the market tomorrow morning. Why are you back so late?" "The food is cold. I'll heat it up for you before you eat." Qi Fang nagged. She picked up the plate and walked into the kitchen. "I'm late," Lu Cheng explained with a wry smile. Lu Jisheng picked up the thermos and sized his son up. "You've recovered well. Are you hungry?" "The first. I'll go out for a walk." He said the last sentence very softly to prevent Qi Fang from hearing. As soon as Lu Jisheng went out, Qi Fang poked her head out and asked, "Cheng, did your dad go out?" Lu Cheng didn't help to hide it. "Your dad is really too much. Is he so addicted to chess? He can't even sit still. If he wasn't waiting for you, he would have gone out after dinner." Qi Fang nagged and retreated into the kitchen. "In order to wait for me, Dad deliberately postponed the chess game," thought Lu Cheng, flattered. He waved to his 2 cousins on the sofa, Qi Yunfei and Qin Xiaoxiao. Then he turned around and walked to the dining table. He took a photo of the dishes that didn't need to be heated and sent it to Yenjika. "Do you want to eat?" "Me too." Yenjika added a picture of a table full of food with an emoji of, "Come on, let's hurt each other." Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh. "Brother Lu Cheng, are you chatting with sister-in-law?" Qi Yunfei looked more beautiful and cute with her short hair. Her college entrance exam results were average, only good enough for an ordinary university. However, she was very satisfied and didn't want to repeat her studies. Lu Cheng answered frankly. Qi Yunfei said half doubtfully and half emotionally, "You have been together for 3.5 years. Why are you still so clingy?" "What do you mean by clingy?" "This is called having the same 3 views. We can talk about many things and topics." Lu Cheng retorted, annoyed and amused. "Aren't you and Ding like this? For example, just now they said that they both love delicious food, especially Xiushan specialties." Hearing Lu Cheng's question, Qi Yunfei's expression suddenly became strange. Chen Xiaoxiao, who still had some baby fat left, looked at the direction of the kitchen and said in a low voice, "Brother Lu Cheng, Sister Feifei broke up long ago. Lu Qing was confused. Immediately, a strong desire to gossip surged. When did it happen? What happened? His cousin and Ding Yanbo had been dating for more than 3 years, and they started from the most ignorant and most innocent junior high school. How could they break up so suddenly? Qi Yunfei wrinkled her nose and said, "He hooked up with other girls behind my back." Humph, he specially applied for a second account, but the password was the same. I played with his phone once and was curious about who the number belonged to. I tried to log in and found that the girl was just average. I don't know why he liked her. Do you need me to teach him a lesson? Lu Cheng suddenly realized and comforted her. No. Qi Yunfei hurriedly shook her head. You are quite generous? Lu Cheng asked in surprise. Chen Xiaoxiao couldn't help but laugh. Brother Lu Cheng, Sister Feifei had a new boyfriend not long after they broke up. Her desk mate is now Ding Yanbo regretting it and has been wanting to get back together. She had a new boyfriend not long after they broke up? Lu Cheng sighed and laughed at himself. I really don't understand you young people. After dinner, Lu Cheng helped to clean up the table and sat on the sofa. While chatting with his 2 cousins, he thought about how to spend this month in Xioshan. Look for Fatty Jiang? He didn't have summer holidays anymore. He had officially joined a company in Huaqing. After Qin Rui got his professional 9th pin certificate, he went to Gaofun to look for more opportunities. He wasn't in Xioshan either. Tao Xiaofei reluctantly settled down. His father sent him to a county project, and he could only come back for a few days every month. Now that he thought about it, Lu Cheng realized that he couldn't find any good friends in Xioshan. Everyone was starting to get busy for the future. At this moment, Yan Zhika sent a message. Sitting blankly expression, Cullen, Sister Jingjing is outside the Great Wall. Shuang was brought back to the company in Gaofun by her father. Song Li also found a job in Gaofun. Anyway, other than my relatives and you, I am all alone in Xioshan. I feel a little sad. The couple's hearts are in sync. Lu Cheng sighed to himself. Laughing out tears expression, what a coincidence. I was also counting friends of the same age and the result was the same as yours. Speaking of this, he added emotionally, that's a good thing. Because we have all grown up. For the whole of July, Lu Cheng and Yanjika stayed at different places and moved around frequently. Sometimes, they would go to Jingkai or Ningxue to accompany their elders. Other times, they would go to Jiangnan to play for a few days. At the beginning of August, they started to pack their luggage and prepare for a 20-odd-day trip. Their first stop was overseas. Their destination was Nile, the place with pyramids and mummies. Chapter 591. South of Nile, Tetan City. It was August, close to the desert. It was dry and hot here. Under the scorching sun, even the air seemed to be distorted. Looking as far as the eye could see, the dense fog made it seem like an illusion. Lu Cheng and Yanjika, each riding a camel, swayed as they approached the remains of the temple where Isis was worshipped. Not far behind them, a professional tour guide in a long robe and headscarf followed with narrowed eyes. He was invisible himself to avoid disturbing the guests. With Lu Cheng's strength, he had no problem traveling in the Nile tourism industry. However, he didn't have to rely on brute force for everything. That would lose his fun and mood. Hiring a tour guide with excellent connections at a high price could save him a lot of trouble. Just like earlier, if it were just 2 foreign tourists wanting to ride a camel, they would definitely be extorted and might not be able to enjoy themselves. However, once the tour guide stepped in and found a familiar friend, the problem was immediately solved. The reasonable price and attentive service made the young couple feel comfortable riding the camel. You get what you pay for. If it could be solved with money, there was no need to resort to violence. After approaching the ancient and dilapidated temple, Yanjika jumped off the camel lightly and looked at the interior happily. She had long sleeves and trousers, and her black hair was tied up with a headscarf. She looked like a local, but her actual purpose was to protect herself from the sun. A girl's obsession with sunscreen was unimaginable to men. Lu Cheng, on the other hand, was wearing a t-shirt, shorts, and martial arts shoes without any self-awareness. This is the temple of Mother Earth goddess Isis. Yenjika pointed to the front and introduced to Lu Cheng. It is said that one of her original forms is Inanna from Sumerian mythology, the goddess of Venus, fertility, sex, and love. Seeing someone nodding in confusion, Yenjika said with a smile, "Do you feel that this goddess Inanna is a stranger?" "I think I've heard of her before, but also not," Lu Cheng replied embarrassedly. "This is a tourist spot added by a fairy at the last minute. I didn't have time to do my homework." "Then I'll change her name, and you will be familiar with her." Yenjika pursed her lips and smiled. "What is it?" Lu Cheng asked curiously. "Call me Teacher Yen first. Instructor Yen is fine too." The girl turned her head and lifted her chin slightly. Her slender and beautiful neck was faintly discernible under the cover. Lu Cheng was amused. "Please give me some pointers, Instructor Yen." "Cough, have you heard of Aphrodite? Venus, have you heard of it? Air, these two names are just the difference between Gu Qinhai's name and Gu Luo's name. Also, have you heard of the Holy Mother?" Yenjika raised her hand and said, "One of their prototypes is Inanna." "She's really something." Lu Cheng was dumbfounded. After showing off her knowledge, Yenjika pursed her lips and pointed at the weathered sculptures, statues, and stone pillars. "Come, help me take a picture. I'll ask the tour guide to take a picture of us later." Lu Cheng took out his digital camera and waited for her to pose. At this moment, a man who claimed to be a staff member came over. He had a unique beard and indicated that he could take a picture of the couple. Knowing that he would be blackmailed if he accepted the offer, Lu Cheng shook his head firmly without any hesitation. When Lu Cheng pressed the shutter, the staff member suddenly jumped out and was captured by the camera, leaving behind an image. Then, he pestered them and kept asking for money in slang English. Although the couple was not short on money, they were not willing to be forced. Lu Cheng looked back at the tour guide and saw him walking over quickly. He reached out his right hand and patted the staff member on the shoulder. In an instant, the staff member felt cold all over. He felt like he was locked in a cold storage at the edge of the desert during the hot season. He couldn't help but shiver. He wanted to open his mouth but could only hear the chattering of his teeth. He wanted to move but found that his body was stiff and difficult to control. Lu Cheng pulled his little fairy away as if nothing had happened and changed their position to take another picture. He also signaled the tour guide to take care of the rest. The tiger on the ground, who always liked to act tough, was frightened by the encounter just now. He yelled that he wanted to call the police but didn't dare to make any real moves. He was easily persuaded by the tour guide. After taking a group photo, the young couple held hands and wandered around the ruins of the ancient temple. They talked and laughed and they were very happy. After visiting the last scenic spot, they returned to the bustling area. Under the tour guide's introduction, they entered a Babula restaurant, which was also a special barbecue restaurant. Here, they carefully selected lamb legs and other ingredients and applied pepper, salt, and ingredients recorded in their ancestral secret recipe. The barbecue was fragrant and tender. "It's not bad. It's different from what we had in Dika. But I'm still a little sick of it." Yenjika looked at Lu Cheng with bright eyes and said in a slightly aggrieved tone, "Nile is all barbecue, barbecue, barbecue. If not, it's just pancakes and bread. Why didn't they develop other methods? China's food culture has a long history and rich methods." Dika was the capital of Nile. It was the couple's first stop upon arrival. They spent 3 days there and saw many ancient relics, pyramids, and mummies. That's why we have to lower our standards when traveling. Lu Cheng looked at the girl with a smile and said, "We still have one more stop in Nile before going to the grasslands. It's definitely different from here." Yeah. Yenjika's eyes flickered. She chuckled and said, "I'm thinking if you were the domineering seal, what would you say just now?" Lu Cheng thought for a while and held back his laughter. "I'll contract the kitchen here and make you a bowl of egg-fried rice. The eggs must be laid by Xioshan's free-range chickens and flown over. Not domineering enough? You should buy this restaurant and fly in a few chefs to make Chinese food." Yenjika looked up and dissed the domineering Xiao in high spirits. After eating barbecue and drinking the specialty drinks, the couple returned to the hotel. One rested while the other pondered over the next day's itinerary. Half an hour later, Yenjika stood up against all odds and got into a stance. She calmed herself down until her godly will was complete. Her mind and body were at peace. She retracted her chi and blood, allowing her force and spirit to collapse inward and condense into a small ball in her lower abdomen. At the end of July, she understood the meaning of retract. Under Lu Cheng's guidance, she began to break through to the Dan stage. This was a process, not a node. Lu Cheng had used the opposition and rotation of his supernatural abilities to balance and form the Dan. This time, he let Yenjika use her supernatural ability of earth as yang and her own power as yin. Under the control of her spirit and the replenishment of her chi and blood, they opposed each other, rotated and balanced. Gradually, there were signs of success in the Dan stage. In another 7 or 8 days, the girl should be able to use this method to completely enter the Dan stage. While Yenjika was cultivating, Lu Cheng was not idle either. He pressed his right hand on his wife's back and used the ice mirror to listen to her subtle changes. He compared them with the experience he could recall in order to find the key. Over and over again, even though Yenjika was extremely passionate about her dream of reaching the Dan stage, she still couldn't overcome the exhaustion of her body without using the swordsman formula and the wholeness formula. As the night deepened, she lay on the bed and didn't want to move. "I'm sweating all over," she said with satisfaction. "But I don't want to move at all. I don't want to take a shower." She just wanted to lie there comfortably and be massaged by Cheng. "You'll feel better if you take a hot shower." Lu Cheng smiled and massaged her. "Didn't you see the notice from the hotel? There's going to be a power outage later. There won't be any hot water. Maybe there will be a water outage too." No. Yenjika turned her body and shook her sweaty hair. She buried her face in the pillow with a look of non-cooperation. "Who's the one who always urges me to take a shower? Who loves to take a shower the most?" Lu Cheng laughed. "I'm going to stink you to death later." Yenjika replied, hatefully. "I don't care. I'm just worried that you can't accept it." Lu Cheng laughed and helped his little fairy to turn around. He saw her squinting her dark eyes and quietly observing the outside world. Yenjika pouted. "If there's a power outage, you're in charge of the hot water. If there's no water, you'll freeze and turn into water. Aren't you known as a multifunctional household robot? I have to save my ice force in case there's no air conditioning at night." Lu Cheng explained and tried to pull Yenjika up. No. Yenjika shook her head like a rattledrum. She lifted her right foot and pressed it against Lu Cheng. She even used a repulsive force. Lu Cheng easily broke through the repulsive force and grabbed her foot. He stretched out his fingers and scratched it a few times. His little fairy wriggled like a fish and laughed shyly and angrily. She hurriedly withdrew her foot and sat up abruptly. After playing around for a while, the atmosphere gradually heated up. Suddenly, the girl gasped and said, shower first, shower first." "Who said she didn't want to shower just now?" Lu Cheng said vaguely. Don't you know? Don't you know that girls are fickle?" Yenjika resisted with all her might. "Then go shower." Lu Cheng carried the girl in his arms. I don't want to shower with you." The topic seemed to return to the beginning, but it gradually quieted down. After some time, the couple lay on the bed. One was physically and mentally satisfied, while the other was smiling like a peach blossom. "I'm thinking of a technical problem," Lu Cheng said thoughtfully. I'm not listening. It must be extremely dirty." Yenjika closed her eyes and shook her head. "I'm talking about your supernatural ability." Lu Cheng snickered, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by the girl. "I already said I'm not listening. Your mind is so dirty." In the midst of their banter, they suddenly heard a loud boom. It seemed like an explosion had happened somewhere in the city. Immediately after, firecracker-like sounds came from all over the city. "What's wrong?" Lu Cheng sat up. Yenjika picked up her phone and saw a message from the embassy. It said, "You're in trouble. Nile is in turmoil, suspected to be a coup d'etat. All Chinese citizens are advised not to go out blindly. If necessary, please head to the embassy, consulate, or Chinese company's premises and wait for evacuation. At the same time, Lu Cheng also received the message. The couple looked at each other, feeling a little unreal. Something big happened just like that? P.S. For the sake of harmony, the war-torn zones and their surroundings do not correspond to the real world. Please don't make wild guesses. Chapter 592. Without much confusion, Lu Cheng cleared his mind and said calmly to Yenjika, "Cuckoo, I'll call the embassy to confirm the situation so that we won't lose contact. Pack your luggage. Put the important and necessary things in your backpack. Don't bring too many clothes, just 2 sets will do. Throw the rest in your suitcase and be prepared to throw them away if you can't take them with you." The message he just sent included the embassy's landline. It was the first time for Yenjika to encounter such a situation, so it was natural for her to be flustered. However, after hearing Lu Cheng's calm tone and feeling his confident attitude, she quickly calmed down. She seemed to have a plan in mind. She nodded gently and answered, "Okay." She put on her clothes and walked quickly to the sofa. She opened the suitcase and took out the necessary items. Lu Cheng held his phone and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. While looking at the burning buildings outside, he dialed the embassy's landline. Maybe it was because there were too many people calling back after receiving the message, but all 3 landlines were busy. He couldn't get through, so he decided to look for his master. "Hey, brat, I didn't expect you to experience this kind of thing. Back in the days when I was in the war-torn zones." Geezer sure bragged casually. The corner of Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He almost couldn't control himself and interrupted this unreliable old man. After saying a few words, Shi Jiangwo smacked his lips and said, "East of the Nile is the war-torn zone. It's going to connect together. This old man was still thinking about when I should send you there for training. Great, I've encountered it myself. Okay, I won't say more. I'll ask for the military's contact number in Nile, not the embassy's." "Won't say more. That's called not saying more." Lu Cheng face-bombed and cursed silently. After waiting for more than a minute, Geezer sure sent a message with the phone number. The gunshots outside were getting louder and louder. It was as if the whole city was being fried. The lights around them flickered on and off, making the hotel look like an isolated island in the middle of a vast ocean. Lu Cheng had been through a lot. Under such circumstances, he remained calm and composed. He calmly called the military personnel sent to him. "Hello, who is this?" After the call was connected, the person on the other side asked in English vigilantly. Lu Cheng wanted to imitate the Dragon King's simple, "I'm Chen Chi-Tao," and introduce himself. But considering his own popularity, he had to spend a little more effort. "I'm Lu Cheng, a disciple of the Ice God sect. I'm currently traveling in Nile with my girlfriend. I couldn't contact the embassy, so I got your number through my master." "Heaven-shaking roar?" the other side asked in surprise and delight. Obviously, they had heard of this heavenly son of heaven. "I won't be happy with your answer," Lu Cheng complained to himself. "Yes, what happened to Nile? What should we do?" The military personnel pondered for a moment before replying. Tonight's incident happened very suddenly. There weren't any demonstrations as a prelude. The information we have gathered isn't comprehensive enough. So far, we can only confirm one thing. Many tribes in Nile have formed anti-government armed forces and are fighting fiercely with the Central Army. According to reliable sources, more than 5 brigades of the Central Army have already defected. There are quite a few mighty ones with physical invulnerability as well as many Inhumans. He paused for a moment before adding, "This is rather strange. In Nile, the pharaoh has a very high reputation. Most of the mighty ones are willing to listen to his orders. If he were to make a speech on television, things wouldn't be so chaotic. In the end, it's as if the pharaoh has gone missing." After a while, the military personnel returned to the main topic. "With your strength, there shouldn't be any problems as long as you aren't targeted. Where are you currently?" "Tetons," Lu Cheng replied succinctly. "That's a little out of the way." There aren't any projects nearby. The military personnel pondered for a few seconds before continuing. Currently, there are two paths. The first is to head north along the Nile River and rendezvous with the workers of a few enterprises at Kukeng. Then, head towards Dika. Once you reach Dika, you can evacuate via plane or ship. If this path isn't accessible, you can head northeast to the port city of Fartuat at the edge of the Sea of Death. We will coordinate with ships to pick you up. However, don't be anxious. Perhaps the chaos will die down by daybreak. I will inform you if we decide to evacuate. Lu Qing had a plan in mind. He replied calmly. Putting down his phone, he listened to the sparse gunshots. He turned to Yenjika and saw that she had already moved the important items into two backpacks, one big and one small. The rest was left in the trolley box. She would take what she could and leave what she couldn't. Let me give it a try. Lu Qing comforted his little fairy with a smile. What do you want to try? Yenjika was confused. Lu Qing didn't answer. He walked to the side, carried his luggage, and twisted his body on the spot. He launched an elbow strike and threw a punch, causing the air to crackle. Not bad. It doesn't affect my movements. I don't need to change my fighting style. He nodded in satisfaction. Indeed, I have to give it a try. Yenjika's pink lips parted slightly. She had a look of realization mixed with annoyance. Then, she followed Lu Cheng's example and carried a small black backpack. She exercised her fists and legs to get used to the feeling of something swaying behind her back. I'm a little nervous, but also a little excited. She pursed her lips and nodded slightly. She had always wanted to travel the world with her sword. However, she was still a little scared when something really happened. Lu Qing chuckled. There wasn't a hint of worry in his eyes. It might not be the worst development. The military wants us to wait and see. Ku, take a nap. Don't be in a hurry to use the wholeness formula. Rest up and prepare for what comes next. What about you? Yenjika asked instinctively. I'm still in good spirits. I'll check the terrain first and be on guard against possible disturbances outside. I'll take a nap after you get enough sleep, Lu Qing replied in his usual tone. All right. At times like this, Yenjika didn't try to persuade or argue. She obediently followed his instructions and lay on the bed with her clothes on. She didn't want to waste time. She closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. After 2 minutes, she opened a slit and said timidly, I can't sleep. I can't even enter meditation. My mind is full of messy thoughts. Lu Qing shook his head and chuckled. He sat beside her and reached out to massage her temples. He kept chanting, confrontation, confrontation, confrontation. The atmosphere softened and the surroundings became quiet. Yenjika slowly relaxed her tension. Her eyelids started to get heavy. She mumbled, Qing, I feel like my mother is singing a lullaby to me. Empress Dowager knows how to sing a lullaby? Lu Qing asked casually. No. Yenjika replied with a smile. No. Then why do you say it's like? Lu Qing was amused and surprised. Anyway, it's like, if she sings it, it should feel like this. Yenjika emphasized and slowly fell asleep. When she fell asleep, Lu Qing looked outside and listened to the surroundings. He also searched and downloaded a detailed map of Nile before the internet was disconnected. Amidst the occasional gunshots and human voices, he thought of something. He called the hired tour guide and asked him to rent a car. Without the unlimited energy supply of Jindan, using a car instead of walking could effectively conserve energy. This could be the difference between life and death at a critical moment. The tour guide explained that things would calm down soon. Besides, there was no place to rent a car in the middle of the night. He would come with the driver at dawn. At around 4 in the morning, Lu Qing heard noises approaching. The gunshots were getting clearer and clearer. He quickly woke Yenjika up and told her to hurry up and recover. Yenjika's hazy eyes quickly cleared up. She soon looked like she was ready for a battle. She didn't look like she had just woken up. Gunshots approached and glass shattered. Orders and shouts came from the bottom floor of the hotel. Lu Qing put on his backpack and listened carefully. The rebels are looting and plundering. They haven't hurt anyone yet. If we fight head-on, We might become the main target and be targeted by the rebels in the entire city. Yenjika put on her backpack and analyzed. Yeah, we don't have to do anything. Let's hide and figure out the situation first. Lu Cheng looked around and said, when the rebels are about to reach this floor, we'll climb through the window to the bottom. They probably won't come back after plundering this place once. Yeah. Yenjika nodded vigorously. Lu Cheng looked at the thumb-sized cars on the ground and asked Yenjika with a smile, are you scared? No. I'm not afraid of heights. I'm almost at the dance stage. Yenjika raised her chin and said, besides, we've already jumped buildings before. While they were talking, they heard a mixture of local dialect and English at the elevator entrance and the emergency exit. Heavy and messy footsteps could be heard clearly. Lu Cheng and Yenjika looked at each other and opened the ventilation window. With a push of their hands, they squeezed out easily and stood on the narrow protrusion. His feet seemed to be embedded in the concrete. He reached out to hold the girl's delicate hand and helped her flip over. Then he held Yenjika's waist and jumped and pressed down, landing firmly on the protruding point of the next floor. He was so precise that there was no error. Yenjika exerted force on her wrist and pushed open the closed window. Under the dumbfounded gazes of the crooked men and women, who were wearing nothing but bathrobes, she jumped in. Lu Cheng followed her effortlessly. He and Little Fairy quickly moved to the lower floor and randomly found an empty room to wait. After more than half an hour, the rebels finished plundering and left in high spirits. They didn't even care that there were only suitcases and no guests in the room. There must be rats who know how to dig holes. It's a little chaotic. Let's go to the lobby to find other guests and see who drove here. We'll try to form a group and evacuate to Kukang as soon as possible. Lu Cheng made a prompt decision, without waiting for the military's notice. That's what I think too. Yenjika chimed in without hesitation. The two went down to the lobby and saw many foreign tourists gathered. They were frantically discussing the situation and solutions. Lu Cheng was about to go up and talk when he suddenly heard a car coming at high speed. The car screeched to a halt at the entrance. He took a step back and stood in front of the girl. Through the glass, Lu Cheng saw a group of Nile soldiers in military uniforms with guns spread out and seal off the hotel. Why are they here again? He muttered subconsciously. Yenjika pondered for a few seconds and said, this shows that the situation is very chaotic. The rebels and government forces are scattered and have no contact with each other. Those who came later don't even know that this place has been plundered. Does this mean that even if we go overboard, we won't be surrounded by a large force? Lu Cheng said thoughtfully. Yenjika nodded solemnly. At this moment, the hotel door was pushed open. A strong and burly officer walked in majestically, surrounded by armed soldiers. He wasn't holding a gun, but the scimitar. After looking around, he said coldly, take them all away. Chapter 593. The moment the officer with the scimitar gave the order, the soldiers behind swarmed in and spread out, surrounding the crowd. The black and heavy muzzles of their guns were leveled at them like evil and terrifying eyes. The foreign tourists were so frightened that they lost their voices and dared not move. Not all of the soldiers remained in place. 90% of them passed by and came to the elevator. Half of them took the elevator while the other half climbed the safety passageway. Their footsteps were heavy and messy, as though they were going to search floor by floor and not miss a single guest. The remaining soldiers each took up a position and signaled the tourists in the lobby to hold their heads and squat down, waiting for them to gather and leave. Seeing that there weren't many enemies left, a blond Caucasian man mustered his courage and shouted, I'm an American citizen. Our consul is rushing over from Kukang. The United States had an embassy and 3 consulates in Nile. Hearing the shouts and seeing that the hostages were eager to give it a try, the officer with the scimitar made a gesture with his eyes. I don't care who you are, squat down. A soldier rushed over, raised the butt of his gun, and smashed it on the blond Caucasian man's back. He screamed in pain and staggered forward. Bam! The soldier kicked the back of his leg with his leather boot. causing the American tourist to kneel heavily on one knee. Not daring to move, he hurriedly raised his hands to hold his head. Oh my God! One by one, the tourists came to terms with the reality. They held their heads and squatted down. Lu Qing didn't act rashly. To be honest, with his strength, he was still worried just now. But now, these people weren't enough. But he had to consider Yan Zheke and the innocent crowd. If he couldn't end the battle in a short time, Yan Zheke might be implicated. Even though she was almost at the Dan stage, she hadn't experienced life and death battles. If she panicked and made a mistake, it would be a regret that could never be made up for. Lu Qing squatted down and took the opportunity to look around, taking in the situation. There are 5 soldiers with guns guarding us. They are spread out so I can't catch all of them in one go. There are 2 soldiers at the stairs and 2 at the elevator. There are another 2 outside the main entrance. As for the rest, I don't know. That military officer has his own way of walking. His combat strength should be on par with the more powerful ordinary Dan stage. Lu Qing thought for a while and said to Yan Zheke, who was also squatting beside him, "This is different from the rebel army. They are spaced so well that it's impossible to attack 2 of them at the same time. Also, they can easily form a crossfire. They seem to have received formal training and aren't a mob." I think so too. Did they betray us, or did they take advantage of the chaos to do something? Sword. Yan Zheke replied in a low voice. Lu Qing nodded slightly and whispered in his wife's ear, "Things are a little strange. We can't follow them. If we get into a situation that we can't solve, we'll be in trouble. I'll find a chance to attack that officer later. Hide behind that pillar, don't attract attention, and avoid stray bullets." 2. Bye. But, she muttered to herself, "I'm almost at the Dan stage. It's not a problem for me to deal with 2 or 3 soldiers. It's mainly because you don't have experience and make mistakes. Once we leave the hotel, I'll watch over you and you can take your time. Later, if a soldier's attention isn't attracted by me and wants to attack you, the first thing you need to do is to use your supernatural ability to get rid of his gun. The second thing you need to do is be ruthless. Don't think about anything else." This was a precautionary plan. It could effectively avoid mistakes and prevent Ku from being hurt by the gun in close combat. Okay. Hearing that she had a mission and wasn't a burden, Yan Zheke was no longer depressed. Her fighting spirit was aroused. She repeated silently, "Get rid of the gun. Be ruthless. Get rid of the gun. Be ruthless." As a top student, she had already started to plan how to use her supernatural ability and martial arts to get rid of the gun. Seeing that all the hostages were squatting down, the soldier who knocked over the American tourists walked back to his original position. When he passed by a mixed-race tourist with exaggerated breasts, he extended his leg to feel them and let out a vulgar laugh. The female tourist was angry, but she didn't dare to say anything. "Oh, be careful. We'll talk about this after we bring all of them back," reminded the officer with the scimitar. "Talk about this? How can we talk about this?" Many tourists in the lobby suddenly understood. Their bodies started to tremble uncontrollably and they cried out loud. It was as if they could already foresee the tragic ending. Bam! The soldier who was reprimanded fired a shot at the window on the other side. He shouted angrily, "Shut up!" At this moment, Lu Qing transmitted a message to Yan Zheke. "Now!" Flames and frost rose from the surface of his body. Suddenly, a crimson fireball and a crystal-cold light swirled around each other. The fireball and cold light instantly disintegrated into 9 balls. As Lu Qing leaped, they shot towards the 5 soldiers, the stairs, and the elevator. They were like arrows released from a fully drawn bow. After obtaining the complete set of cultivation techniques, Lu Qing didn't waste it. He combined them with his own techniques and developed several application techniques for Ice Force and Fire Force. Boom! The nearest soldier was smashed in the face by the fireball. His head was badly bruised and charred. He threw away his gun in pain and fell to the ground, struggling. Gradually he fell silent. Of the 2 soldiers who were slightly closer to him, One of them had his arm unnaturally twisted by the explosion and rolled to the side twice. The other one was covered in a layer of ice. His eyes were confused, his movements were slow, and his whole body was stiff, like a rusty robot. The other two soldiers and the guards at the stairs and elevator reacted in time due to the distance. They rolled or dodged skillfully. Yenjika followed the plan. She supported herself with her hand and flipped to the back of the pillar on the right. Lu Qing didn't care about anything else. He landed not far from the officer with a single leap. A flaming red scimitar was coming at him. The officer's face was cold. He expanded his back muscles and arms, as if he was going to cut through metal with one strike. Lu Cheng's body paused. He gathered his qi and blood and changed his rhythm. Then he took a step diagonally, shook out his right arm, and punched the side of the officer's scimitar. Bam, 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 bam. The place where he was originally standing was filled with bullets and sparks. It was the hurried counterattack of the remaining soldiers. They didn't dare to shoot directly at Lu Cheng's body. They were afraid that if he dodged, they would accidentally hurt the officer. Bam! Lu Cheng's body grew taller and bigger, like a god descending from the sky. He punched the side of the officer's scimitar fiercely. Crack! Under the punch, the scimitar broke like a piece of paper and hit the officer's shoulder, breaking his collarbone into two pieces. He couldn't maintain his cold face and staggered with a twisted expression. Bam! Lu Cheng reached out with his left hand and grabbed the other arm of the officer. Then he poured the ice spirit force into the officer, making him stiffen and shiver. A grab followed by a press, he pushed the officer back 2 steps. Stars were splattered on the ground behind him. With a pull of his hand and a turn of his body, Lu Cheng hid behind the officer and shouted in English, "Stop! Put down your guns!" At this moment, Yenjika saw a soldier circling to the side of Lu Cheng's temple secretly. Her heart tightened and she instinctively activated the plan. The muzzle of the soldier's gun suddenly became heavy and dropped to the ground. Then, a slender and well-proportioned leg kicked the gun away with a bang. Yenjika's mind was filled with what she had just repeated. Without thinking, she stomped on the ground, turned around, and kicked again. Bam! Her left leg tightened into a whip and whipped between the soldier's legs. The sound of something breaking was heard. The soldier's eyes rolled back and he fainted. His lower body was quickly soaked. Lu Cheng shouted again, "Stop!" At the same time he held the frozen officer and circled him. The soldiers and survivors who rushed in from the gate stopped and didn't dare to move. Lu Cheng looked around and said, "Put down your guns." He made a gesture of breaking the officer's throat. The soldiers hesitated and threatened, but what they got in return was the officer's broken arm. Thus, they threw away their guns without a leader. Lu Cheng ordered them to make way and shouted to the rest of the tourists, "Hurry up and leave." The group of tourists seemed to have woken up from a dream. They even forgot to thank him and hurried out of the door. In 2s and 3s they found a car and left. Some of them knew that it was chaotic outside and didn't dare to run around. They gathered outside and waited for Lu Cheng and Yenjika to come out. Lu Cheng carried the speechless officer and approached his wife. He glanced at the unconscious soldier who was bleeding and bleeding. You asked me to be more ruthless?" Yenjika explained blankly and absent-mindedly. "Well done." Lu Cheng praised sincerely. He held the officer hostage and brought Yenjika out of the hotel slowly. They got into the rough jeep. After waiting for a while, when the remaining soldiers came down with the other tourists, he made another threat to let them go and let everyone leave separately. Next, he didn't try to unite the foreigners who stayed behind. Instead, he ordered Yenjika to drive to the north. If there were people who could and were willing to follow, let them follow. There was no need to delay. To him, the safety of his little ferry was the most important thing. Teton City, in the government building. A young general with blue eyes and a thick beard finished listening to the report and picked up the hotel's check-in documents. "Lu Cheng," the general roared. "Are those intelligence officers drowned in donkey dung? Why didn't they monitor and report such people entering the country?" An official beside him smiled bitterly. "General Ferrio, many of them have been transferred. They don't have enough manpower. Moreover, everyone's mind isn't on this. Hope everything goes smoothly, the young general prayed and stood up suddenly. I'll handle this. After driving for a while in the dark, Lu Qing remembered that the Jeep might have a positioning device. He was about to find a way to change vehicles and interrogate the officer when he received a message from the Chinese military. Things are complicated. Evacuate as soon as possible. Follow the original 2 routes. There are still 4 tourists from our country in Tetons. If it's convenient, I hope you can bring them along. They are currently hiding in the ground floor car park of the Silagu supermarket. Chapter 594. Stepping on the officer, Lu Qing read the message to Yenjika. Before he could ask, Yenjika looked straight ahead and turned the steering wheel. Go! Lu Qing was confused. Don't you want to discuss whether to go or not with me? Yenjika drove the car fast in the middle of the night. My answer is yes. At this point, she pursed her lips and revealed a faint self-deprecating smile as she said, if the situation was dangerous, I definitely wouldn't agree to go. But now I can handle it. Isn't it natural to pick up a few people on the way and help my compatriots? I have you by my side and my strength is not bad. But when I encounter this kind of situation, I still feel panic, confusion, and fear. Although I slowly calm down, I can't be as rational as usual. Some of the words I said and some of the reactions I showed before became my unreasonable self that I don't like. I'm like this, let alone them. If I put myself in their shoes, they must be very scared, terrified, and uneasy at this time. They really want help and rescue. Sigh, I've always said that there's a difference between those who are close to me and those who are distant from me, and that I'm more indifferent to those who are further away from me. I can pity them, but I definitely won't worry about them. Now it seems that I'm not that selfish after all. Lu Qing listened quietly, then chuckled and said, this is already very good. He pressed the keyboard and replied to the military personnel, I'll take them with me. After sending the message, he remembered his worries and hurriedly told Yenjika that the military jeep might have a positioning device so that she could prepare to change cars. In the middle of the night, without a key, can you open the door and drive the car? Yenjika asked. I can't. Lu Qing was almost speechless. I haven't learned this skill. In movies and TV series, there are often scenes of directly pulling the wires and connecting the ignition to start the car. But I haven't tried it and I don't know if it works. No wonder the seniors said that it's always good to have more skills in the martial arts world. At this time, Yenjika rolled her eyes and said, actually, the positioning device is easy to solve. My supernatural ability is similar to a magnetic field, so I can interfere with it. Will it also interfere with the driving of the car? Lu Qing deliberated and asked. I don't know about that. Yenjika was silent for a few seconds before she gave her opinion. Why don't you give it a try? But Lu Qing was ready. After a while, the jeep was stable again. Yenjika said happily, no problem. That's good. Lu Qing wiped his non-existent cold sweat and began to use the army formula and his aura, trying to break the officer's defenses and get useful information from him. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will win every battle. After driving for a while, Yenjika said faintly, Qing, how do you get to that Silagu? Lu Qing was stunned for a moment and found it hard to answer. After a few seconds of silence, he said with relief, I downloaded the map. In the corner of the underground parking lot of Silagu supermarket, Ma Chaoyang hid in the shadows, using the support pillars as cover. He was a veteran backpacker and was currently on an experiential trip around Nile. Behind the SUV beside him was a family of 3. They set off from Dika and traveled all the way to Tetons. Due to the invasion of the hotel by the rebels, they took the opportunity to escape to a nearby area and met Ma Chaoyang. Under his suggestion, they hid in the parking lot and waited for the chaos to pass. What should we do? Will it be chaotic for a long time? Zhou Yong, a middle-aged man with a beer belly and a parted hairstyle, asked in a low voice. There was still a lingering panic in his voice. His wife, Li Xiaoyun, whose hair was in a mess, hugged her daughter, Zhou Xianying, who was only 11 or 12 years old. She kept looking left and right, afraid that the group of barbaric, vicious, and inhumane Nile soldiers would jump out from any corner. In the process of escaping from the hotel, if it weren't for a few rebels attracting attention, they wouldn't have escaped so smoothly. At the same time, they also witnessed the bloody scene of the rebels being beaten to death and injured. They also witnessed the tragic scene of a few ladies being pinned down and violated by the rebels. Born and raised in a normal and stable country, it was already good enough that they didn't break down after seeing such a scene. They only reacted a little too aggressively. Ma Choyang had passed by the border of the war-torn zones before and could be considered experienced. He shook his phone and said, "I've contacted the embassy. They said they will think of something. There will definitely be a way." Okay. Zhou Yong calmed down a little when he thought of having backup. At this moment, Ma Choyang's phone, which showed signs of disconnection from time to time, rang. There was a message. He looked down and a surprised smile appeared on his face. He blurted out, "The embassy has replied. They said that someone is coming to pick us up. We will retreat to Kukhang and meet up with the main force. They told us not to wander around and to wait here patiently." As he said these words, he couldn't help but tear up. It felt good to not be abandoned. It felt good to have someone to worry about and help. It was like being alone outside all year round. At the most difficult time, he suddenly received a call from his mother. Zhou Yong let out a long sigh, as if he had seen the light in the darkness and grabbed onto hope. He turned to his wife and daughter and said, "Don't be afraid. The embassy has sent someone over. It will be fine." But Li Xiaoyun and Zhou Xianying nodded in unison, as if they had found their backbone. The waiting time was equally unbearable. They didn't dare to move, so they could only look at their watches and change their posture. It was as if they had lice. "Why aren't they here yet?" Li Xiaoyun couldn't help but mutter in the quiet underground parking lot. "It's chaotic outside. They won't be here so soon." Ma Choyang was also anxious, but he still replied to calm the atmosphere and comfort himself. At this moment, the elevator in the distance arrived and a few footsteps were heard. "They're here," Zhou Xianying exclaimed in surprise, but her father covered her mouth. Zhou Yong shook his head at her with lingering fear, indicating that they should wait a little longer. Earlier in the hotel, some tourists thought that the police had arrived and rushed out excitedly, but they were caught by the rebels. As for the outcome, it was not hard to imagine. Tap tap tap. The heavy footsteps drew closer and a voice spoke in unfamiliar English. "Where is your car?" "In front. It's right in front. Most of my money and jewelry are there," a low female voice answered in a panic. Ma Choyang, Zhou Yong, and the others' hearts sank. They instinctively curled up into a ball, trying to hide as much as possible. Through the windshields on the opposite side, they could vaguely see 4 people dressed in rebel uniforms escorting a pretty white woman to the side of a crimson sedan. One of them seemed to be the leader. He stood alone by the side, while the other escorts occasionally rubbed the white woman's chest and lower body. In the compartment in front of the passenger seat, the white woman pointed at the crimson sedan with her chin. A rebel soldier took out the car key and pressed it, unlocking the door. Then he went around the sedan and opened the door, trying to take something out of the compartment. The soldier who seemed to be the leader moved closer to the sedan to prevent his subordinates from taking the opportunity to hide the valuables. The rest of the escorts couldn't help but look at the opposite side. Seeing this, the white woman suddenly moved. She stomped her right foot to the side and pressed the tip of a soldier's foot. At the same time, she half-squatted and swung her left elbow backward, hitting another soldier in the crotch. "Ouch! Ouch!" One of the soldiers hugged his foot while the other covered his crotch, forgetting to shoot. The white woman immediately turned around and ran quickly, trying to escape. Bang! 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 After a few gunshots, she stopped and fell to the ground. The back of her head was blown open by the bullets. Red and white blood flowed all over the ground, accompanied by the victim's normal incontinence. The soldier who was the leader blew on the front end of the large-caliber pistol like he did in foreign movies. He was very pleased with himself. He had received formal training and was a rare sharpshooter in the tribe. At this time, Zhou Yong covered the mouths of his wife and daughter tightly, his face full of horror. The scene just now almost made him cry out involuntarily. No! The soldier who was searching the sedan raised his head in frustration. That bitch! He looked at the dead white woman and muttered softly, "What a pity!" The leader's face darkened as he waited for his two injured subordinates to recover. To Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, Li Shaoyan, and Zhou Shenying, these few short minutes felt like years. They practically counted every second that passed, and even the sound of their breathing became soft, afraid that they would be discovered if they were just a little bit louder. After a while, except for the soldier whose crotch was injured, the rest of the rebel soldiers began to smash the windows of the surrounding cars. They searched for anything left inside, causing waves of alarms to ring. Perhaps they were tired, or perhaps they felt that this was not a big gain and that they might as well rob other places. The group of soldiers left the parking lot not long after, leaving behind a silence filled with the smell of blood. Ma Chaoyang and Zhou Yong looked at each other, exhaled, and collapsed. They did not know when this nightmare would end. At this time, they heard the familiar Hua Nation language, and they heard standard Mandarin. Ma Chaoyang? Zhou Yong? The people from the embassy are here? Is the rescue team here? Ma Chaoyang and the others jumped up and ran out. At this moment, the Hua Nation language that they used to find so ordinary was like the sound of nature from the light, so intimate and so pleasant to the ears. When they came out of the hiding place, they saw a couple. They were very young and looked more like a college couple. The girl was beautiful and elegant, like a light source in the darkness. The young man was chiseled and calm. Although he was not a soldier, the latter had a calming and comforting power. Zhou Yong, Li Shaoyan, and the others felt like they had just escaped death. They instinctively said, "You?" Lu Cheng interrupted them and said with a smile, "We are from the military. We came here according to the embassy's instructions. Don't waste any more time. Get out of here as soon as possible." Hearing this, Ma Chaoyang and the others could no longer hold it in. Their vision blurred. P.S. Zhou Yong, please recommend me. Damn, I'm allergic. The punctual update record I've maintained for several days is gone. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.